Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I am the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1366 of the War News stream. And today we have very big news. We've heard that Ukraine attacked Russian forces in Crimea with major explosions. We've also seen that the U.S. has launched a Venezuelan air attack exercises right off the coast. And also, there's been a Russia-Ukraine peace plan revealed by the United States, and it is ugly. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, folks, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we have been able to hear more significant developments from practically every single region, except for East Asia, which generally had absolutely no developments over the course of the day. Nevertheless, we have been able to hear of significant developments as far as the war in Ukraine is concerned, as the Ukrainian armed forces have conducted another major and significant attack against the Russian Federation's armed forces within the Crimean Peninsula. At this moment, we have confirmed that explosions have occurred in large volume around the area of the city of Saky and the Saky airbase, and we are also hearing that further explosions have been reported throughout the entirety of the oblast, while we are still waiting for more information about the exact damage that has been caused throughout the entirety of Crimea and the possible weapons systems that the state of Ukraine used in the midst of the attack. Meanwhile, the Russian Federation has continued to ramp up its rhetoric against the state of Ukraine, with Vladimir Putin today declaring that the Russian Federation will not stop their fight in the war in Ukraine until all objectives of the special military operation are achieved, which is practically paramount to unconditional surrender by the Ukrainian armed forces and the acceptance of any and all Russian demands. Meanwhile, the Russian Federation, through a statement by Vladimir Putin, has also stated that the Ukrainian government is a criminal government, one that exists outside of any legitimate legal framework within the country, and that investigation should be launched into persecuting and generally prosecuting the Ukrainian leadership that is currently in charge of the country at the moment. Meanwhile, the United States of America has tried to propose a 28-point peace deal to the state of Ukraine that will be presented to the Russian Federation if the United States can bend Ukraine's arm, encourage them enough to be able to try and present the finalized plan to the Russian Federation. The 28-point plan largely is paramount to unconditional surrender, but we'll get into that later tonight. tonight. Meanwhile, the United States of America has also conducted a bombing drill today against the Republic of Venezuela, with a large amount of B-52H Stratofortresses taking off from Barksdale Air Force Base and other air bases throughout the country and arriving within the area of Venezuela, along with several FA-18 Super Hornets from multiple carrier squadrons based off of the USS Gerald R. Ford, currently within the Eastern Caribbean, and U.S. Second Fleet's command as well. All aircraft then turn off their transponders within very close proximity to the coastlines and generally the territorial waters of Venezuela, heavily suggesting at this moment that the United States of America is conducting dry runs for eventual armed attacks in the form of airstrikes against the Republic of Venezuela that will be happening here within the future at an undetermined point. The United States of America has also made it clear that they will not be giving a single inch in foreign policy to the Republic of Venezuela about any possible cessation of rising hostilities, or for that matter, any form of a diplomatic compromise with the Venezuelan government. We have also seen that the United States of America's ongoing military exercise with Trinidad and Tobago is still ongoing directly off the coast of Venezuela. Moving on out of that area, we have also been able to hear that the Islamic Republic of Iran has found itself at the absolute crux and paramount of its ongoing water shortage crisis, with the president of the Islamic Republic of Iran now announcing that the government at a minimum will be abandoning Tehran, or generally abandoning the capital city, effective immediately, and will be finding another location for the Iranian government to set up a capital within the country. There are several candidates, including Tabriz and Isfahan, along with Mashhad and Shiraz, although it's highly believed at the moment that the Islamic Republic of Iran's government is going to move into a centralized location nationally, which would highly suggest that their government is soon to set up shop within Isfahan. Outside of that, the Israeli Air Force was also seen within southern Syria today, although it is unclear at the moment as to why they were there. There were no recorded airstrikes that were conducted over the course of the day, but they were present. We also have been able to see the Ukrainian armed forces did inflict extremely high casualties on the Russian Federation's armed forces today, stopping most advances within Pokrovsk and Kupiansk, which are the largest ongoing battles at this moment along the current front line, and the Russian Federation appears to still be in an incredibly long and grueling meat grinder at this point, and while making minimal gains over longer periods of time, it does not appear that this war is going to be going much farther on the front line, and the war will be decided, much as we've already known, in the rear line areas inside the Russian Federation and its economic and refinery institutions, and the Ukrainians all the same. We will be making sure to get on into all of the major breaking news that we have gotten over the past 24 hours tonight, starting with our largest stories first, and then working our way on into the smaller stories of the night. And so, of course, folks, we are going to be moving on into our first and largest story of the night, which is going to be taking us directly into Crimea, and generally the Russian Federation at large. The Ukrainian armed forces have been confirmed to have conducted another attack, according to Russian air defense monitors, as a large swarm of drones was seen flying into the area of the Voronezh Oblast, as well as the Volgograd Oblast of the Russian Federation, along with Crimea and Bryansk in smaller numbers. While we have not been able to hear of any confirmed reports of damage or impact within the mainland of the Russian Federation, we have heard of attacks that have been successful around the area of Crimea, and particularly around a significant airfield within the Crimean Peninsula itself, which takes us to the town of Saky and the Saky airbase, which exists here on the western coast of the peninsula, or country, if we want to call it that. The Crimean Peninsula has been a significant portion of Russia's air force and ground forces involvement in the war in Ukraine, with a large number of the Russian Air Force's multi-role aircraft, including the Su-34 fighter bomber, being based out of air bases throughout the entirety of Crimea. One of the most important air bases that we've seen so far for their operational capabilities has been that of the Saky Air Base. Not incredibly close to Ukraine, but still close enough to allow for these Su-34s to have an extended amount of loiter time once they arrive into the area of the front line, where they are able to conduct air-to-ground strikes in support of Russian forces in those areas of the battlefield. We can see on satellite footage a decent amount of Su-34s, Su-24s, and also some variant of the MiG-29 or modernized version of the MiG-29 airframe currently based at this airbase. Of course, the stationing of aircraft on a day-to-day basis changes, and this satellite picture is not entirely accurate of the current disposition of air squadrons that currently find themselves here at the Saky airbase. Nevertheless, a large large number of air squadrons, a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 4, have been seen multiple times throughout the conflict based out of the Saky airbase, with all air squadrons at Saky airbase being operationally involved in combat air patrols and combat air operations around the area of Kherson, Zaporizhia, and the Donetsk oblasts, with other air bases taking over for most air operations inside the Donetsk, Luhansk, and Kharkiv regions, at least at other points of the conflict. This makes Saky airbase a strategically important target for the state of Ukraine, and any attacks that knock out the logistical infrastructure of the facility, or much more for that matter, actually knock out the usable aircraft at this facility, usually are quite a deadly blow to the Russian Federation and its combat abilities against the state of Ukraine and their ability to try and project any air power onto the current front lines. Large reports have surfaced around the Saky area that explosions are emanating from just about every single direction south of the city, which means that they are all coming from the Saky airbase. This appears to be confirming that at the moment, while video and picture evidence has not emerged, eyewitness reports are confirming, at least from the sound that they're hearing alone further south, that the Saky airfield is being obliterated at the moment by Ukrainian drones, with at least several explosions being recorded coming from the southern direction near to the airbase. There are a large amount of targets that can be hit outside the aircraft and the logistical infrastructure at the airfield, including an S-300 or S-400 air defense battery, which has been roaming around the area, including directly at the Saky airfield and further north and towards the town of Yevpatoria, which has also seen the presence of an S-300 and S-400 air defense battery at other times throughout the conflict. If this is confirmed to be the case, the Ukrainian armed forces may have destroyed another S-300 or S-400 air defense battery, making it the third one in 2 weeks after the destruction of 2 full S-400 air defense batteries within the coastal defense battery at Novorossiysk, and this would also make it quite more difficult in the long run, especially for the Russian Federation to be able to conduct any large caliber air defense operations, considering that the S-300 and S-400 air defense systems are generally their only form of large caliber air defense systems, and Russia's ability to produce any larger number of these throughout the conflict has entirely dissipated, with no new S-300s and S-400s being noted or physically cataloged anywhere within the Russian Federation or inside of the active fronts in Ukraine. We also
speaking of the lack of S-400 air defense, has Russia successfully negotiated the S-400s back from Turkey? Because we had heard they were negotiating for those systems, basically buying them back from Erdogan that they'd already sold the system to. They wanted to buy them back because, of course, they can't produce anymore, and they're really, really slow producing them. So have they gotten them back, or is that still in the air?
No, like they haven't gotten it back still. The Turks are still holding on to their only S-400 at the moment.
Well, interesting then. They're really screwed. They got to get on a jet and go beg for that quick.
Man, they're going to have to go get on a jet. You know what's interesting is that they actually had a chance to go get on a jet, which was yesterday, to go talk to Witkoff and see about talking to the Turks at the same time about getting that thing back. And they didn't even take the opportunity. It really shows y'all how goofy the Russians really are, because at this point, the S-400, the singular S-400 the Turks have, is desperately needed by the Russians. They have run out of a large number of S-300s and S-400s that were in service at the beginning of the war and since then have been destroyed, and they won't even go through the effort to try and recover one that they actually could recover at the moment from the Turks, considering that the Turks aren't even able to buy, due to the sanctions, spare parts to keep the thing running. So the Turks would get rid of it if they could, and the Russians aren't even willing to go through the effort to go and get it back from the Turks in the first place. It's just absolutely ridiculous. But still, the attack at Saky airbase appears to be quite significant, and there has also been other reports that have been unconfirmed at the moment that explosions have been occurring throughout the rest of the Crimean Peninsula. Of course, we do not know where these are occurring at the moment. It's just generally a broader rumor or claim, but there are several areas where explosions could be happening that are highly likely based off of the history of prior attacks within the area. Dzhankoy, Sevastopol, Simferopol, Kerch, Feodosia, as well as Yalta and Alupka are also significant targets, along with Olenivka, that could have been targeted and hit by Ukrainian armed forces overnight. At the moment, we have not been able to confirm through video or picture evidence or direct eyewitness accounts from the ground any of these attacks at the moment, and so we are still waiting for additional updates and information about how strenuous the attack on Crimea was overnight. We do know that Saky airbase appears to have been obliterated at the moment, according to eyewitness accounts, but we are still waiting for further information and details to emerge from the area for us to ascertain exactly how heavily heavily damaged Russian Federation armed forces are at the moment inside of the Crimean Peninsula. Still, while the Russian Federation is taking a pretty big licking inside of the Crimean Oblast, this has not stopped them from continuing their governmental rhetoric inside of Moscow, and in a very interesting way today, as Putin has dressed up once again and is playing soldier and wandering around Russia to make some statements about the ongoing conflict. We have been able to hear, before I get to the first bulletin, that according to Putin, and here's a picture of him from today, he's looking quite ghoulish, really.
Oh man, he's looking extra pale. Now this is Bunker Boy right here. This is Bunker Boy. He probably hasn't seen sunlight in a very, very long time. That is a very pale face right there. And also, he's looking haggardly, like he's looking extra haggard. This kind of feeds into the idea that maybe there are body doubles running around, because this is like 10 times more haggard than the last Putin that we saw just when he made his last public appearance a few days back.
You know, folks, I have to tell y'all that this actually isn't a picture of Putin. This is actually a picture of the upcoming brand new release by Spirit Halloween of a brand new doorstep animatronic that can scare the kids that are coming up trying to get the candy. This thing sits there and goes, "Oh, I'm going to start a war," and then it scares off all the kids. So, you can go and get one of these this next Halloween from a Spirit Halloween if you'd want to, but, I don't really know who would want this thing. I think this thing is going to be traumatizing little kids if you got this and put it on your doorstep.
Just tough. And also look at his hands too. Like his hands are like, is there any blood even in those hands? His hands are literally almost translucent looking. They're so pale. Like that's really interesting right there. If I didn't know any better, I would say he looks almost sick, like sick with a disease or something, like with the way he looks.
I'd say he's almost cancerous, but, of course, folks, the rumors about his health are largely rumors. We cannot confirm any of them, but there is a large rumor circling around that he has some form of cancer, and apparently, no matter the efforts, they really can't treat it. It's kind of a little bit funny at the same time, if that rumor is true. Putin is heavily obsessed with trying to find some immortality elixir or something along those lines, because I think he understands that when he dies, he's going to the pits of hell immediately, so he's trying to generally avoid that, and put that on hold for a little longer if he can, but time's running out for him. Nevertheless, Putin did state that the goals of the special military operation must be unconditionally achieved. That was an official statement and quote by Putin today. So what he is saying today is that the Russian Federation will not accept anything less than unconditional surrender by the state of Ukraine. Anything less than that, the Russian Federation will not accept. Remember that, because that's going to be very important for our later reporting that's coming around here in just a minute. The Russian Federation, according to Putin today, this is an official statement from the highest echelon of the Russian government, will not accept anything less than unconditional surrender by the state of Ukraine. So I want you all to remember that. That's going to be very important here in about 5 minutes. An additional statement that was also made by Putin is that the Ukrainian government is a criminal organization. According to Putin, he has stated that this is no longer any kind of a political leadership in Ukraine, it is a criminal group, and has also stated that there should be criminal investigations into Zelensky once the war ends to be able to hold him accountable for conducting an illegal and illicit government operation inside of Ukraine that is illegal according to the Russians. So the Russian Federation is doubling down at this point on the statements that the Ukrainian government is illegitimate and that they are going to accept nothing less than an unconditional victory inside of Ukraine. An additional action that the Russian Federation is apparently going to be taking, according to the Institute for the Study of War, big respect to them. We respect the Institute for the Study of War, and they also follow us as well. But nevertheless, according to what we've been able to hear, the Russian Federation may be planning to forcibly relocate Ukrainians living within the occupied territories to Siberia as part of a scheme to stimulate the economic growth of underdeveloped Russian regions. The Russian government is likely to use coercive means to do so, including economic incentives, or the promise of employment opportunities within the Siberian regions of Russia. This is something that is quite concerning. And many of you all will know the parallels to prior periods of history when Ukrainians were shipped off en masse to Siberia. And that was actually during the time of Stalin in the 1930s. During the 1930s, a period in Ukrainian history called the Holodomor was well in effect, and millions of Ukrainians were starving in a state-manufactured famine to where all of the crops that were produced in Ukraine, which was the breadbasket of the Soviet Union, were being shipped out of the area, and there was no food being left for the Ukrainians themselves. This left them to practically starve. And then a large number of them afterwards were sent into Siberia to work on government projects, usually in the gulags, until they eventually died inside of the death camps, which are the gulags. This is something that did happen in the past and was another action by the Russian Federation against the Ukrainian people that did nothing to endear the Ukrainians to the Russian Federation or the Russian people throughout the rest of history. This is something that appears that the Russian Federation is possibly going to be trying to do again, but try and make it look a little bit more above board this time. Basically, it's a forced relocation of all of the Ukrainians that are currently within the occupied territories, and they're going to ship them off into Siberia. And here's why. I can actually tell you all the reason why the Russians are going to do this. It legitimizes their claim to the occupied areas of Ukraine. If you ship out all of the Ukrainians from the occupied territories and send them off into Siberia, you're watering down the amount of ethnic non-Russians in Siberia, while simultaneously you're greatly decreasing the percentage of the population within occupied Ukraine that is actually Ukrainian. Then you're going to start seeing that the numbers might shift where it becomes majority Russian occupied population-wise, where there's more Russians living in the occupied regions of Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk than there are Ukrainians. That makes it very difficult in the future, if this territorial dispute is brought up again once the war ends, to say that these lands are Ukrainian, because then you'll be seeing that the land is basically occupied by the Russians alone. It's very similar to what the Russians did at the end of World War II against the area of Königsberg, or generally East Prussia, as it used to be historically called. Nowadays, people would call that the Kaliningrad Oblast, or at least the northern part of Eastern Prussia. What the Soviets did back then was that they took all of the Germans that lived within modern-day Western Poland, and all of the Germans that lived within the Kaliningrad Oblast, and they forcefully relocated them all to East Germany. And then a lot of those people ended up hopping the border and then escaping into West Germany. But that's a story for another time. That's still what the Russians did. That's actually what the Russians did in a lot of these areas, as a matter of fact, and that's why you'll see that there are basically no German-speaking populations within historically German areas of Poland, is because they were forcibly relocated. That's also why you'll see that a large number of Poles that once lived within Western Ukraine are no longer there, because they were also forcibly relocated from historically Polish land into what is modern-day Poland, and so on and so forth. It happened over multiple countries within this region, and that is what the Russian Federation is going to be trying to do again. It is basically cultural genocide, and also most likely a direct genocide against the Ukrainians, with what their fate will most likely turn into in Siberia, to try and change the population demographics within the occupied regions to make it a large majority Russian, and to remove the Ukrainian influence in populations from those areas. It's highly likely. Still, a lot of people are talking at the moment about Putin stating that the Ukrainian leadership is illegal, criminal, is in his words, and vowing to continue the war until the Ukrainians unconditionally surrender. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right. So it's really interesting to me that Putin came out today in the midst of these new peace negotiations between the Russian government and the United States government. And all of a sudden, Putin said, looking very ghoulish, by the way, that Ukraine's leadership is illegitimate. And also, he vowed to unconditionally finish the war. And he, in his own words, the special military operation. So what are your thoughts? It looks like 55% said Putin will never agree to peace, while 34% said Putin is just repeating propaganda, and 8% said Putin will end the war by necessity. So there's one thing that Russia is suffering from really badly right now, and it's on the economic front. Russia is struggling terribly. Their oil exports are cut in half. Pretty much every major industry has been cut down dramatically. So they are hurting for money quite badly. But at the same time, though, Putin is receiving external help, so he can keep his country basically afloat temporarily while he keeps the war going. And that's his current plan. Basically, citizens be damned. If they live in poverty, Putin doesn't care as long as he can keep his war going. So I would say Putin is never going to agree to peace. He will agree to let Ukraine capitulate, which is basically what the 28-point peace plan is. It's a planned capitulation of Ukraine, but Putin will never agree to a real peace, because his original goal by invading Ukraine was to take the territory, also basically subjugate the Ukrainian people, and to remove Zelensky and basically turn Ukraine into Belarus, a vassal state, and install someone who's pro-Putin. That's what his goal was and still is, and he is not stopping that goal. He said today, basically reaffirmed it, he is going to keep on taking Ukraine until he has the entire thing, and unless Zelensky basically leaves office or gives up his country, then there is going to be no peace. So I'm with the 55%. This situation is basically hopeless. hopeless, and the U.S. is once again doing the clown show. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be with the 55% as well. The Russians and Putin are never going to agree to peace. They have made it incredibly clear they are going to keep this war going until all of their demands are met. Basically, what they are saying is what Hitler said in 1938. They are going to keep the border war with Czechoslovakia going until they get the Sudetenland, and that's it. Anything else less than that, they are not going to accept. And then they will also want to be able to continue to aggress farther, even from Ukraine. They've made that wildly clear, and I'm not even going to go through all of the hoops that we do to remind everyone about that, but the Russians have made it openly clear at multiple levels that they're not stopping at Ukraine. The concept of the Ruski Mir, or as it's called in English, the Russian world, is the idea of that the Russian Federation has, just like Adolf Hitler had with the idea of Lebensraum within his book Mein Kampf. It is the idea that the Russian people deserve to have a significant sphere of influence where they largely will be autonomous economically from external powers and nations, and that they also have to reclaim, as far as their ethnicity as Russian-speaking people, their former glory that they have lost due to the West putting them down and a whole bunch of other scapegoats and bad guys that they come up with out of the woodworks, basically boogeymen. So the Russian Federation, once they achieve what they want in Ukraine, they are going to go to war with Ukraine again and steamroll them again, and then they'll eventually go for NATO. That's what they're going to do. They've made that wildly clear. Even if it doesn't make any sense, they are going to work towards that goal until they can achieve it. If you look at Hitler's goals in the Second World War, they made no sense either. But nevertheless, the Germans still pursued them, and then lost dearly because of those foolish pursuits. But that's what the Russian Federation is going to be going for. And while the Russian Federation is clearly making that an open secret today that they are going to keep pushing until they unconditionally win inside of Ukraine and the Ukrainians basically surrender entirely to the Russians, the United States of America has been moving forward with their 28-point peace deal, which was authored by, apparently, Witkoff and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Not getting political there, just stating who the authors are so that we all know whose stamps of approval are directly on this 28-point peace plan from what we understand today. But we are going to get y'all into Washington, D.C. and read off to y'all what the actual 28-point peace deal actually is and what its terms are. So, let me get you all to the one that is in English. There were actually two that were published today, one in Ukrainian and one in English. We are going to read the full plan in English. Also, in case you're wondering what the original Ukrainian text looked like, in case you understand Ukrainian and you would like to read that one, we actually have an additional one here that was posted by Marko Mikkelsen, who is actually a member of the Estonian government, the chairman of Foreign Affairs, the Republic of Estonia, and he actually published the one in Ukrainian text for the peace plan. So you can also read the Ukrainian version as well. They are both identical, just in different languages. So we are going to be moving into the English one and reading it off point for point. So I want to make sure that we make this peace plan wildly clear and read it off aloud to all of y'all here in the audience so that we all can actually know at the moment what the United States foreign policy initiative is currently looking like right now inside of Eastern Europe. So, here is the full plan. Number 1, Ukraine's sovereignty will be confirmed. Number 2, a comprehensive non-aggression agreement will be concluded between Russia, Ukraine, and Europe. All ambiguities of the last 30 years will be considered settled. It is expected that Russia will not invade neighboring countries and NATO will not expand farther. 4, a dialogue will be held between Russia and NATO, mediated by the United States, to resolve all security issues and create conditions for de-escalation in order to ensure global security and increase opportunities for cooperation and future economic development. 5, Ukraine will receive reliable security guarantees. 6, the size of the Ukrainian armed forces will be limited to 600,000 personnel at maximum. 7,
Whoa. First big number 6 is a huge problem right there. First of all, Ukraine does not want to reduce its military because it doesn't want to get reinvaded later by the Russians. So that's going to be a huge no-no for Zelensky on number 6.
That is going to be. Number 7, Ukraine agrees to enshrine in its constitution that it will not join NATO, and NATO agrees to include in its statutes a provision that Ukraine will not be admitted in the future indefinitely. 8, NATO agrees not to station troops in Ukraine. 9, European fighter jets will be stationed in Poland. 10, the U.S. guarantees that the United States will receive compensation for the guarantee from the Ukrainians, so the Ukrainians will pay the United States for this treaty. If Ukraine invades Russia, it will lose the guarantee. If Russia invades Ukraine, in addition to a decisive coordinated military response, which is undetermined what that will be, all global sanctions will be reinstated. Recognition of the new territory and all other benefits of this deal will then be revoked. If Ukraine launches a missile at Moscow or St. Petersburg without any cause, the security guarantee will be deemed invalid. 11. If Ukraine is eligible for EU membership, and it will receive short-term preferential access to the European market while this issue is being considered. 12. A powerful global package of measures to rebuild Ukraine, including but not limited to the creation of a Ukraine Development Fund to invest in fast-growing industries, including technology data centers and artificial intelligence. The United States will cooperate with Ukraine to jointly rebuild, develop, modernize, and operate Ukraine's gas infrastructure, including pipelines and storage facilities. Joint efforts to rehabilitate war-affected areas for the restoration, reconstruction, and modernization of cities and residential areas, infrastructure development, extractions of minerals and natural resources, and the World Bank will develop a special financing package to accelerate these efforts. Number 13. Russia will be reintegrated into the global economy. The lifting of sanctions will be discussed and agreed upon in stages and on a case-by-case basis. The United States will enter into a long-term economic cooperation agreement for mutual development in the areas of energy, national resources, infrastructure, AI, data centers, rare earth metal extraction projects in the Arctic, and other mutually beneficial corporate opportunities. Russia will be invited to rejoin the G8. 14. Frozen One funds will be used as follows. $100 billion in frozen Russian assets will be invested in U.S.-led efforts to rebuild and invest in Ukraine. The U.S. will receive 50% of the profits from that venture. Europe will add $100 billion to increase the amount of investment available for Ukraine's reconstruction. Frozen European funds will be unfrozen. The remainder of the frozen Russian funds will be invested in a separate U.S.-Russian investment vehicle that will implement joint projects in specific areas. These funds will be aimed at strengthening relations and increasing common interests to create a strong incentive not to return to conflict. 15. A joint American-Russian working group on security issues will be established to promote and secure compliance with all provisions of the agreement. 16. Russia will enshrine in law its policy of non-aggression towards Europe and Ukraine. 17. The United States and Russia will agree to extend the validity of treaties on the non-proliferation and control of nuclear weapons, including the START I treaty. Note, New START, the last major U.S.-Russia arms control treaty, is due to expire in February of the next year. 18. Ukraine agrees to be a non-nuclear state in accordance with the treaty on the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. 19. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant will be launched under the supervision of the International Agency or the International Atomic Energy Agency, and the electricity produced will be distributed equally between Russia and Ukraine. 20. Both countries undertake to implement educational programs in schools and society aimed at promoting and understanding tolerance of different cultures and eliminating racism and prejudice. Ukraine will adopt EU rules on religious tolerance and the protection of linguistic minorities. Both countries will agree to abolish all discriminatory measures and guarantee the rights of Ukrainian and Russian media and education. All Nazi ideology and activities will be rejected and prohibited by both states. 21. Territories. Crimea, Luhansk, and Donetsk will be recognized as de facto Russian, including by the United States.
Whoa. That's a bit of a nuclear bomb right in the middle of it, isn't it?
That is, and let me make sure to get this all out. I want to make sure to get all the points off to everyone in a bullet fire way, and then we'll break down each one of them here in a second. Kherson and Zaporizhzhia will be frozen along the line of contact, which will mean de facto recognition along the line of contact. Russia will relinquish other agreed territories it controls outside the 5 regions. Ukrainian forces will withdraw from the part of Donetsk Oblast that they currently would control, and this withdrawal zone will be considered a neutral demilitarized zone, internationally recognized as territory belonging to the Russian Federation. Russian forces will not enter this demilitarized zone. 22. After agreeing on future territorial arrangements, both the Russian Federation and Ukraine undertake not to change these arrangements by force. Any security guarantees will not apply in the event of the breach of this commitment. 23. Russia will not prevent Ukraine from using the Dnieper River for commercial activities, and agreements will be reached on the free transport of grain across the Black Sea. 24. A humanitarian committee will be established to resolve outstanding issues. All remaining prisoners and bodies will be exchanged on an all-for-all basis. All civilian detainees and hostages will be returned, including children. A family reunification program will be implemented. Measures will be taken to alleviate the suffering of victims of the conflict. 25. Ukraine will hold elections in 100 days exactly. 26. All parties involved in this conflict will receive full amnesty for their actions during the war and agree not to make any claims or consider any complaints in the future. 27. This agreement will be legally binding. Its implementation will be monitored and guaranteed by the Peace Council, headed by the President of the United States. Sanctions will be imposed for violations. 28. Once all parties agree to this memorandum, the ceasefire will take effect immediately after both sides retreat to agreed points to begin implementation of the agreement. And full stop. That is the entirety of the 28-point peace plan in its entirety. So, now it's time to break it on down. As I'm sure many of y'all heard Matthew give full stops several times during that, which I would have to agree, well deserved. A lot of this is absolutely insane. And I would have to say, folks, out of all 28 points, only about 3 of them are really without any mention, where there's no issue. The other 25 of them have severe and significant issues to them. And there's been massive responses and condemnation to this peace plan, not only in Europe, but in the United States as well, from other significant voices. This is just an absolutely ridiculous one. So let us go through, and also, Matthew, if you want to butt in whenever you like and point out a provision that you find absolutely stupid, because I'm going to be just working our way down the list and pointing out all of the goofy provisions that exist inside of this 28-point peace plan. So first, number 3 is it is expected that Russia will not invade neighboring countries. So an entire provision of the 28-point peace plan is that we assume that Russia will not follow through on its territorial ambitions they've already made clear they're going to follow through on. That's number 3. That's probably one of the dumbest ones that you could put down as number 3, because we're not even saying Russia will state in treaty, which wouldn't matter anyways, because they could always break it, that they will not invade NATO countries or neighboring countries. It just says we kind of assume that they won't, and we hope that they don't. So that is an incredibly weak provision in the first place. Also, another thing that's absolutely stupid is that we are going to have a talk between Russia and NATO, mediated by the United States, to resolve all security issues and create conditions for de-escalation. Now, that one is actually probably one of the most damning provisions of this, not for the Ukrainian side of the conversation, but because of the NATO side of the conversation. Russia considers every single Eastern European country in NATO that is a NATO member to be a security issue. So the Russians, apparently, according to this provision, can bring that up. And we might just say to all the Baltic states and Poland, we're going to make a special provision that if y'all are attacked, Article 5 can't be invoked in your defense. We might do that, because that's basically what this is saying right here in this 4th provision of the peace plan, is that they can bring up any security issue they want. NATO has no security issue with Russia, rather than the fact that they've been aggressive against us and conducting a hybrid war against us for months now. That's our main issue. That's an easy one that they stop. The Russians, on the other hand, have an entire issue security-wise with the existence of the NATO alliance. Finland, the Baltics, and Poland are huge priorities that Russia wants to see removed from NATO and removed from NATO protections. So this actually allows for them to bring that up, and the United States might just agree with them and try and create some special provision to where we won't protect any of the frontier states in NATO that are bordering Russia. Then 5 is Ukraine will receive reliable security guarantees. This one is a joke. They already received the Budapest Memorandum in 1994 due to their agreement to denuclearize their country. That was supposed to be a reliable security guarantee that was ensured by the United States, Britain, and Russia as security guarantors, and that was not followed through by either one of those 3. We also see that Ukraine is going to enshrine in its constitution indefinitely that it will not join NATO or even begin the NATO ascension process. And NATO is also going to include a special statute, which is a provision to the NATO charter, that Ukraine specifically will never be admitted in the NATO ever. It will never happen, according to the provision that will be added to the NATO charter. That is absolutely stupid. We have never in the history of the NATO alliance excluded particular countries within the North Atlantic area, within Europe and North America, from joining NATO. This would be the first time in history that we have ever pinpointed a specific country and said, never in the rest of history can they join the NATO alliance. That is absolutely insane. Also, on top of that, NATO agrees not to station troops in Ukraine. So the ability for the Russians to reinvade Ukraine is entirely there. Also, on top of that, number 6 says that the Ukrainians are going to have to cut down their armed forces to size to a limited number. So they're going to be only half as strong as the Russian Federation would be post-war, which means that the Russians have a 2-to-1 advantage, which, if many of y'all know, that's close to becoming an attacker's advantage of 3-to-1. That's incredibly close. So not that far off. That would give the Russians a leg up at the beginning of the war once it starts. And considering that NATO troops will not be stationed in Ukraine as a peacekeeping force, it is ensuring that the Russians could start up this conflict whenever they want, and there's no physical barrier to stopping it, like, for example, possibly killing NATO troops and then getting the entirety of NATO involved in the conflict. Also, European fighter jets will be stationed in Poland. Now, that's an interesting one. Why in the world does it say that European fighter jets will be stationed in Poland? They're already there. Well, I'll tell you why. This is another one of those genius provisions. It's barring NATO from putting NATO aircraft in the Baltics. That's what it's doing.
Really?
Yeah, so our jets will only be able to go as far as Poland. Anything else, like the Baltics, we cannot put our jets in.
Well, that's a terrible provision.
Yeah, that is absolutely terrible. Also, the U.S. guarantees that we will get money from the Ukrainians every year for the treaty. So to screw the Ukrainians over, and also screw NATO over, the Ukrainians are going to have to pay us for us to screw them over every year. So they're paying an America Plus plan to get screwed over, basically, is what this is. Also, number 11, just skipping past the rest of the provisions in number 10, Ukraine is eligible for EU membership. And that's it. They won't be guaranteed brought into the EU. They just might be brought into the EU. That's a provision. Also, we're going to create a powerful global package to rebuild the Ukrainians, and for some reason, one of the most important things we are going to rebuild is the non-existent artificial intelligence industry in Ukraine, which has never existed and currently does not exist right now. I mean, it only exists in a military application. It does not exist in any other industrial mean that produces money for the Ukrainian nation for a tax base, or at least a usable tax base. So this is absolutely a ridiculous concept. We're going to build data centers and AI centers inside of Ukraine that they never even had. So what? I don't even know what in the world the point of that is. I would feel like it'd be more important to rebuild the Ukrainian industries that were functional and making money that have been destroyed in the war, rather than opening up an AI data center in Ukraine, and several of them for that matter. Also, we are going to modernize their gas infrastructure for some reason. Then we also stated that we are going to rehabilitate war-affected areas, which is also a little bit silly because most of the war-affected areas are currently within Russian occupation because the Russians steamrolled their way through it, about a year later, every single time, and about 40,000 men lost later, they would steamroll through a town and it'd be entirely destroyed. So what towns are we fully rebuilding in Ukraine or rehabilitating that exist? And on top of that, any of the ones that are in the current battlefield in Donetsk wouldn't even count because the Ukrainians have to give up the whole of Donetsk. So that also is going to be in Russian-occupied territory as well. Then also, number 12, let me move on from number 12 actually into number 13. Russia will be reintegrated into the global economy. Well, we're also going to completely drop the persecution, or prosecution more so, of Russian war criminals, and Ukrainian war criminals for that matter, if we ever wanted to prosecute any that did exist. We're just going to completely give up on that. So any atrocities that have been conducted, like the massacres at Bucha, Hostomel, and Irpin, along with the massacres of civilians at Mariupol and the Azovstal, we're just going to completely let that go. So what this is in an equivalent, it's basically that we're going to let the Nazi war criminals of the Second World War that killed millions in the concentration camps, we're going to let them walk scot-free so we can have peace with the Nazi Germans. That's basically what the provision there is saying. We also, and this also is just absolutely stupid, this will stop the Russians from agreeing entirely, we are going to liquidate $100 billion of frozen Russian assets to invest into Ukraine from the United States' end, and then we are going to reap 50% of the profits from that venture. So America is going to steal...
That's real. Go ahead.
So America is going to steal $100 billion from Russia, because at this point we're saying they did nothing wrong according to this treaty, but we're still going to take $100 billion out of their pockets. So at that point, we're basically stealing it from this standpoint to go put the money into Ukraine, and then we are going to be the ones that make the profit off of that. That's absolutely stupid.
Yeah, it's a really stupid idea.
And then 15, a joint American-Russian working group on security issues will be established. No Ukrainian involvement, just the Russians. So the Ukrainians will not have a direct line of access to say, hey, the Russians are messing with us. It will just be the Russians that have a direct line of access to us. Also, apparently, Russia is going to enshrine in its law, just like Hitler did in Nazi Germany in 1938, that they don't have any aggressive or ill wills towards Europe and Ukraine. That's exactly what Hitler did. In 1938, when the Munich Agreement was signed, Hitler said, he pinky promised Britain and France that he was never going to annex the rest of the Czech Republic, and he was never going to push any more territorial claims through the rest of Europe. That wasn't going to happen, and he pinkies promises. So we're also going to have the Russians pinky promise to us now, in the present day, the very same thing. Russia is also going to be extending the validity of treaties on non-proliferation and the control of nuclear weapons, which I don't even know how that's a part of the Ukrainian deal, because that's an American-Russian issue that doesn't even deal with Ukraine, but we're now lumping it in as an issue that can be resolved and worked over with Ukraine. So we're adding in provisions that don't even deal with the Ukraine war. We're just adding in stuff that we would like to have worked on. And instead of doing it as a separate treaty like we should be, it's now going to be attached to the war in Ukraine. So now the stopping of non-proliferation is going to be attached to whether the Ukraine war starts or not again, instead of being attached to the concept of non-proliferation itself. So this is a very stupid provision as well. The Ukraine agrees to be a non-nuclear state. That's already confirmed. We don't even need a provision for that. The Ukrainians are a non-nuclear state and do not develop nuclear weapons. They don't even have the ability to refine and enrich uranium. So this is a pointless provision. Also, to reward the Russians for their work in Ukraine, they are going to be getting half of the electricity from the operations of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. And apparently, the Ukrainians and Russians are going to have to start in educational programs in schools to curb racism and prejudice. Which I don't even know why in the world the Ukrainians would need to be taught that, because it's really more so the Russians that have been the most racist and prejudiced against the Ukrainians historically. The Ukrainians don't like the Russians because they've been picked on by the Russians for hundreds of years. So it's really more so the Russians that have been pushing this one on along. Then, just to get us through our last ones here, because we want to make sure to be as thorough as possible, Ukraine is going to have to now give up land. The land that they currently have, and I'll show you all the active front line right now on Deep State UA. Massive shout out to Deep State. They keep a very accurate map. This area here, through this area, this is the area of Donetsk that Ukraine still controls. Ukraine is going to have to give all of that up, and everywhere else, the front line is going to be frozen where it is. So the Russians will get control of Crimea by de facto, along with Donetsk and Luhansk. The United States is going to officially recognize those lands as Russian, and Zaporizhzhia and Kherson will just be occupied by the Russians indefinitely, generally at this point. That's what that provision is also saying, which is ridiculous, because now we are not only telling the Russians, just stop the front line where it is, we're actually rewarding them by giving them even more territory at this point, the exact amount of territory that they stated that they wanted at this point, at least by the last statements that they made. 22, after agreeing on future territorial arrangements, they will not change these agreements by force. So once again, saying they're not going to start a war again. Tell me how well that's gone with Thailand and Cambodia, India and Pakistan, Iran and Israel, and everyone else in the world where we went and negotiated a ceasefire or a peace treaty. That didn't really turn out too well, because if anything, this isn't resolving any of the underlying issues with the war in Ukraine. This is only emboldening the underlying issues to resurface again on the Russian side. They will be able to start this war again, and we're practically rewarding them at this point. Also, Russia won't stop Ukraine from using the Dnipro River. That was a given. If any territory was going to be ceded by to the Russians, obviously the Russians can't impede maritime activities on a river. That wouldn't make any sense. 24, a humanitarian committee will be established to resolve outstanding issues, basically of war crimes. 26, Ukraine is going to be forced to hold elections in 100 days once the war ends. So the Russians will be able to directly determine the outcome of those elections, basically, because that's been one of the major demands of the Russians, is that an election is held practically immediately after the Ukrainians accept some unconditional surrender, so they can basically rig the government how they want. Russian involvement in Ukrainian elections has been a historical standard up until 2014. In 2014, the Russian Federation actually saw the Maidan Revolution, which completely removed Russian influence from the country. Until then, the Russians had practically been rigging elections to see that the Russian-aligned candidate would generally always win. Also, all parties involved in the conflict will receive full amnesty for their actions, meaning there are no war criminals from this war. If you killed 1,000 Ukrainian civilians and you violated 1,000 Ukrainian women, that's okay. You're not a war criminal, according to this. You get a pass. 27, the agreement will be legally binding, and its implementation will be monitored and guaranteed by the Peace Council, which will be headed by the President of the United States, and sanctions will be imposed for violations. And then 28, once all parties agree to the memorandum, everyone's going to run to where they're supposed to be. So basically, the Ukrainians are going to fall back and give up all the land that they're currently holding in the Donbass. So that is the peace deal in a whole, and I've just got to say, this is the stupidest peace deal that we have ever seen. We heard about this yesterday. We didn't get to see the 28 points of it, but this is an absolutely asinine and brain-dead peace deal. This is basically unconditional surrender. This is literally laying out to the Russians that the United States is going to force the Ukrainians to unconditionally surrender to the Russians and give them everything that they want. That's basically what this is saying, bar one or two provisions that kind of are going a little bit towards Ukraine's way, but really more towards our way, and it's only benefiting the United States, greatly, marginally benefiting the United States, like a tiny sliver of it might benefit the United States. The rest of it's benefiting nothing but Russia, and there's nothing in this at all that is a fair concession to Ukraine. Ukraine's basically getting screwed in this entire peace deal. So this is an absolute.
Yeah, I'm not even sure why when the U.S. is saying that Ukraine must make concessions and there must be compromises made on both sides. It's like, where is the compromise for Ukraine here? Because Ukraine has had their land stolen from them. So the U.S. says in response to the land being stolen, they say, okay, we're going to make this permanent. Russia gets to keep that land they stole, and you're not getting it back. So that's obviously not benefiting Ukraine. Also, if they're going to come to a ceasefire or a peace deal, whatever they call this right here, basically a surrender deal, then why are they spelling out that Ukraine must hold elections? What does that have to do with a peace deal? That has nothing to do with it at all. It sounds like something that Putin would want, so that way he could interfere with the elections. And also on top of that, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which is not even Russia's going to be allowed to legally steal 50% of the power from it, for whatever reason. I'm not even really sure what the logic behind that is. It's not Russia's power plant, so that's a huge problem. And also, why is the U.S. trying to make money off of this? That's the sickening part. It's like, first of all, we're selling Ukraine out. Number two, we're stealing Ukraine's money. We're receiving 50% of the profits from the venture of investing the frozen Russian assets into Ukraine. It's not even U.S. money in the first place, and we're trying to get 50% of the profits off of it. It sounds like underhanded shyster deal. If you ask me, it sounds extremely underhanded. Zelensky can't agree to this, by the way. I think most people know that right now. If Zelensky agreed to this, he would be politically finished. He would not have a position in the government for much longer because his people would be very upset about this, and he would basically be surrendering. So also, I don't think Putin's going to agree to this either, because there's certain things in here that he's not even going to agree to. For one of them was something here. It was right in the middle, actually. It was the frozen Russian assets. Putin's not going to agree to those $100 billion plus getting liquidated. He won't agree to that. And he's not going to agree to actually a couple different points in here. So I think this thing is dead on arrival. I don't think anybody's agreeing to this, Russia nor Ukraine, and they shouldn't.
I would have to agree. They certainly shouldn't. And I see some people bringing this up, and, I'm going to address it because enough people have brought it up. It's a point. Some people are like, well, look at the first reply on the Twitter, and this person here, just some random person on Twitter who has 1,600 followers, is saying that this whole entire peace plan is a lie and it's not even real, and this is just a document that Witkoff created after meeting with the Russians, and it has no approval from the president. That is just blatantly false. This has the approval from the president. This is being presented to the Ukrainians right now. Zelensky is talking about this very peace plan right now. We're going to be getting to that later tonight in a minute. So it's not like this is fake. Witkoff is presenting this to the Ukrainians with the approval of the president. The president is the main guy who calls the shots in foreign policy. This was run by the president for his approval, and the president gave his approval on this. There is that, like I gotta say, I don't know what's up with people trying to always act like because they have a political affiliation, their guy that they like is infallible. But this is something that was signed off on by the current president to even be run by the Ukrainians or even presented to anyone for that matter. He put his rubber stamp on it with his approval. This is absolutely like this goes to the highest levels of the executive currently. This stupidity, like this is absolutely a raw deal. It's a raw deal for us in the United States. It's a raw deal for Ukraine. It's a raw deal for the Europeans. The only people who are getting the lion's share of the benefits of this deal are the Russians. This may as well be a capitulation agreement at this point that the Ukrainians are going to sign, and then we're going to hand it over to the Russians and say, okay, sign on the dotted line right here, and you're going to basically screw over the whole Western sphere of influence and also get the chance to start another war.
Yeah, and the stupid part is, even though this benefits Russia tremendously, Russia is too stupid and too dug into the war to even agree to it. Like, Russia's not going to agree to this. I don't think Russia, in fact, I would say the odds are extremely low that Russia agrees to this. And so far, we've heard, it sounds like Peskov, the Kremlin spokesperson, and pretty much everybody in the Russian government has poured water on this plan right here, and they're really not too hot about it, even though it pretty much gives over pretty much everything they want to Russia. Russia, that shows you where Russia's mindset truly is. They want to take Ukraine and they want to conquer it. They don't want to simply stop where they're at right now. They want to finish the job, like Putin said today. So it's wild. That shows you how crazy Putin is. He won't even agree to basically a surrender on the current front lines because he's that sick and he's that dug into the situation.
And also, the console, I wasn't talking about your super chat, by the way. There was, like, I saw your super chat, but there was a lot of other people who were saying that in the chat, and they were like, oh, the enforcers are peddling fake news because of the top comment on the Twitter post. And I was like, no. I was like, that is absolutely not the case. This guy right here is just some random guy on Twitter. And all, like I'll say this, folks. This is how it goes with political people. This is why you can't really trust them for news, and you can't even really take it for what it is. That is clearly a political comment because it's saying, it's running interference and going, oh, no, my top guy that I love and worship practically in my little cult, he can't be wrong. So this, because this is so stupid, it doesn't make any sense. So clearly he can't be involved in it. He's completely involved in it. He's the president of the United States. He is the guy who makes the foreign policy calls and shots. Witkoff only moves when he authorizes him to move on something. That's how it works. That's how it was in the last administration too. People would go, oh, the last president, he's not that stupid to do something this ridiculous, like let the Chinese balloon fly over a country. He would never do that, and he did. He did. It was run by him, and he let it fly over. That's how it is. The president is the president. He's the one who calls the shots on foreign policy, on everything. Nobody is a free agent in the Department of State or anywhere, for that matter, that's an agency of the executive branch, and they get to do whatever they want without running it by the president. If they did that, they would be removed from their positions. Everything like this gets run by the president, and he approves it, and then it's run by the Ukrainians or whoever. So that's how it works. This has been approved by everyone in the U.S. government, and once again, we've gone back from getting pretty much slammed by the Russians in Anchorage and made to look like fools, to now we are basically back at square one that we were at the beginning of the year, where we're acting like the Ukrainians are the ones at fault, and we're just going to give everything over to the Russians and give up and walk off. Which is a very asinine sort of a position to take. It is not within America's interest whatsoever, speaking from an American-centric standpoint, to let the Russians screw over our sphere of influence, because it's not Europe's sphere of influence in Europe, it's the United States. We're at the center of the sphere, so we're letting them screw us over. That's not within America's interest, that's not within Europe's interest, which is a part of our sphere, and it's not within Ukraine's interest either, quite clearly. And a lot of people are talking about this at the moment, this plan. It's not even a peace plan. This is basically a surrender plan, and whether or not Zelensky would even accept this at all. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so we are hearing the reports claiming that U.S. officials expect Zelensky to sign the Russia peace deal, or more like the capitulation deal, within a week. And what are your thoughts? 78% said Zelensky will refuse the USA and basically not sign it, while 8% said Zelensky will have to sign it, and 9% said it's too early to tell. So, in my opinion, I don't think Zelensky's going to sign this. I don't think he should. Definitely not. He should definitely not sign it. And if he signed it, that would be the most stupid thing I think Zelensky's ever done in his life. So, So I don't think he's going to do it. I think he will refuse the United States, but Zelensky will at least try to string this out a little bit, because Zelensky has learned how to operate the USA to a certain extent. And as long as he looks like he's cooperating, that'll generally cut the mustard per se. But if he looks like he outright rejects the peace plan, then the U.S. might try to cut support or do something extreme like that, because that's usually what they've done in the past. So Zelensky has to play the game. He has to play politics a little bit here. But I don't think he has any intention of signing it, and he really should not. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would be with the 80%. Zelensky is going to refuse this. This is a stupid peace deal. And if Zelensky accepted this, he is as much a fool as the current administration is in the United States for even proposing this at the moment. And I have a feeling that he's going to shoot this down. I have a feeling that even if we somehow bent Zelensky's arm hard enough to get him to accept it, the Russians still wouldn't accept this at all. They would still shoot it down, and then they would just demand further concessions until they just practically take the whole of Ukraine, or at least half of it, and then install a puppet government in the other part without even having an election, basically just installing a Russian-led dictatorship within that area. That's what they're going to go for. This is something that the Ukrainians will not accept. They should not accept it, and the Europeans should not stand by and allow this to happen. If the United States starts to make it clear that they are going to completely cut any and all support to Ukraine if they do not accept this, then the Europeans, hopefully, I pray, will step in and go, that's fine, we'll just continue to support Ukraine well on into the future, and if the U.S. wants to pick a fight with Ukraine, they're going to have to pick a fight with all of us. And if you do that, that's going to have worse fallout economically than having an issue with the Chinese by far. We have a collective trade with the Europeans of $1 trillion annually. We have a collective trade with the Chinese that's around $400 billion. So every single time the tariff scares came around here in America and you saw the economic fallout from the $400 billion collective trade we had with the Chinese, imagine that, but 2.5 times larger, and that's what would happen if we tried to pick a fight with the Europeans over this issue. So we would have to back off, and we would have to find another way around this deal. So I would hope that the Europeans will stop this before it can make it any farther. Because moments like these, folks, in foreign policy, where such idiotic and foolish foreign policy prerogatives are made, I guess I can only sum it up to vanity's sake is the only reason that this kind of a decision is being made. So that way the president can call himself the ultimate peacemaker with the 9th piece under his belt. This is an absolutely stupid way to run foreign policy. I don't.
And also, what's the idea? What's the idea behind rushing this all of a sudden? Like, the war has been going on for 3 or 4 plus years now. So all of a sudden, we need to urgently end this thing by December of 2025, which is by the end of the year. Why is there such a rush on it? Why is that timeline so important? What's going to happen if the war goes into January of next year? That it must get done now at the expense of Ukraine basically surrendering. And obviously, the answer is politics. It's clearly political behind it. It's about the optics of shutting it down in the first year of a presidency. That's the idea behind it. There is no reason for Ukraine to suddenly and urgently be forced to capitulate within 4 weeks or less just because someone said so. Why rush something when it's not even right? And also, why rush something when Putin's clearly not in a rush? Putin's going to keep the war going for years. Like, he's not going to stop the thing anytime soon unless he gets exactly what he wants. So why should Zelensky do anything different?
I don't even know. Like, it's just ridiculousness, folks. And I'd have to say at this point, the only thing I can sum this up to, and I'm not even trying to be political saying this just seems to be the truth of it. It seems like we're trying to force this war to end within year 1, so that way the president can say, because he's already saying that he's ended 8 wars. I haven't seen him end a single one yet, but he's saying that he's ended 8. And now he's going to say, because of this, he's ended 9, and he ended the most difficult thing in the world. Everyone said it was impossible. People called him up and said, sir, it's impossible. And he got it finished. He got it done in a year. And everyone said, wow, this is incredible. He truly must be the greatest guy on the planet. You know, he must not even shit. He's just that great. He walks on water. He heals people when he touches them. He's just an incredible guy. And he even ended the war in Ukraine. I guess that's what they're going for. I don't even, like, and when you think about that, folks, what does that even matter? Like, rather than just running your mouth to brag, we're running our whole foreign policy at this point on one guy's ability to sit in some office in Washington and then brag about another war that he ended, even though we ended it crappily and we basically screwed ourselves over just to say that we ended it. Just to say we ended it. We don't get anything other than the ability to say that we ended the war from this, and that's it. Every other way we're screwed, basically. It's like
Yeah.
it's been the same thing. Just to, if you're pissed off about this one, just to say this, that's been the same approach that we've taken against Iran, in Pakistan and India, in Thailand and Cambodia, and everywhere that we've been involved in foreign policy around the world this year. We go in and we force incredibly cheap ceasefires. They don't resolve any underlying issues. It's guaranteed another war is going to start in every single scenario, or that we half-assed something and we didn't even get the job done the first time, and we're going to have to go in and do it again. And we just do that just so that way we can say, look at how great we're doing things, look how great we are. And that's not how foreign policy is supposed to work. Foreign policy is supposed to work off of actually fixing the problem. And it's ugly. I mean, it's not easy. Well, fixing the problem between Pakistan and India, that could take years. It's not a quick victory in foreign policy. Victories in foreign policy are won over almost a decade each, most times. It's incredibly hard to even get anywhere with foreign policy in less than a year. So trying to get everywhere in every single conflict in the world and end them all when you can in less than a year, and they obviously end in failure because you didn't really fix anything, that's not doing anything rather than giving us an ability to sit in an office and have a bragging right, although we're slapping a Band-Aid on a breach in a giant water dam, and the dam's about to breach anyways within the next week because we actually didn't fix the giant crack within it. We just put a Band-Aid on the thing. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. But Matthew, what do you have to say about it?
All right. So getting around to my opinion, I would say personally that Ukraine really needs to check on what they mean by reliable security guarantees. When the U.S. says they're going to provide some type of security guarantee, we don't even really know what that means yet. Like the peace deal that's been laid out, the 28-point peace deal, it doesn't even say what that even means. It says reliable peace guarantees. But at the same time, though, wasn't the Budapest Memorandum supposed to be a reliable security guarantee? Of course, it was a memorandum. It wasn't technically a treaty, but we still gave our word to in exchange for Ukraine giving up their nukes, we were going to protect their country. So we really haven't done that to a large extent. I know some people have argued, well, we've given Ukraine weapons, so we've kind of come to their aid. And then some people say, well, we haven't really defended them that much, so maybe it's really not being honored so well. But are they being offered a NATO-style security guarantee where, for example, if Russia invades Ukraine, then the entire NATO alliance is going to come to Ukraine's aid militarily on the ground and defend Ukraine at that point? Because that's a big deal. Because even if NATO gives a security guarantee, a strong one like that, I'm very confident that Russia is going to rebuild their military and finish the job at a later date, probably in a year or two after this deal is signed. They're probably going to return back and invade again, and then we've just delayed World War III another year. Because then, if we actually honor the security guarantee, we're going to fight Russia directly inside of Ukraine at that point. So we're essentially ensuring that World War III starts in just 12 more months after that.
It means that exactly. And I also saw someone say this, and I'm going to have to address it because I don't know why people say this sometimes. Some people are saying because we're criticizing this peace plan and we're saying that this is ridiculous, that this is the approach that's been taken in foreign policy all year, that we're getting political here on the channel. And that's not the case at all. We do foreign policy analysis, and when people make stupid decisions, we call them for what they are. They're stupid. There's no way that anyone can go and take this 28-point peace plan and argue in a logical and cohesive manner that this makes any sense, or more importantly, protects the interests of the United States of America. There's no way that anyone could make that sort of an argument because it does not. When we talk on this channel about analysis, we are talking about 360 million people in the United States of America, and well over 1 billion people that are a part of our sphere of influence, probably getting close to 2 billion if we actually took a proper count. We are talking about people that right now in this country are having a hard time paying bills most of the time. We're talking about people who struggle every single day to make a living and to come home and go to sleep, to wake up and do it all over again. We are talking about people who have tough lives over here in the West right now, and it's only getting tougher by the day. And sometimes their life is getting tougher in an indirect way because of what's going on overseas, our actions in foreign policy. That has a direct impact on the price of gas, the price of groceries, the price of consumer goods, the price on many things that a lot of struggling, hardworking Americans are dealing with every single day. It has an impact on what our future for our children and ourselves are going to look like for decades. When we talk about this sort of stuff in foreign policy, we're not sitting here and talking about it off of what red and blue says or what we would like to cheerlead or cult worship. We're saying it off of what is most beneficial for those 360 million people within this republic and about the 2 billion people that are a part of our alliance and sphere of influence and what's good for them along with us. That's what we talk about this from. it's very hard for a lot of people to divorce the concept of domestic politics with the idea of being loyal to your country. And no matter what your opinion is domestically on politics, fighting for what's best for our country and what's best for our alliances around the world to see that at the end of the day, decades from now, we will still be the prosperous and mighty republic that we are today. That's what we're talking about, and that's how we analyze this. If you don't like the outcome of our analysis, then perhaps you should more so introspectively look at the kind of events that we're having to talk about and analyze, more so than critique us for saying that the statements and actions by the current administration and the former administration at times have been definitely against American interests and our best securities around the world with our allies and our own interests within those regions. That's really more so where you should be exploring the fault, not in our criticisms, but in the actions that are actually being made that lead us to have any criticisms at all. But moving on out of that, it is time for us to get on into the rest of the news for the night. But before we get on into the rest of that news, I do want to make sure that we get to a couple of questions to give people a brief restroom break before we get on into all the other major news tonight, because we still have a lot to go. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat of the night, this one goes to Jason Lefebvre, and hopefully I'm saying your last name properly, because that's a bit of a tricky one there, but thank you very much, Jason, for that $50 support right there. The largest super chat of the night, by the way, and we do appreciate that very, very much, and there is no comment to address like I mentioned, but we do appreciate that, Jason, and thank you very much for helping to support the channel yet again. And Enforcer, what say you?
And a huge thanks to you, Jason, for the incredible support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And I gotta say, I didn't throw in a comment, but we are still greatly appreciative for your support and helping this channel to keep rolling, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here on air tonight and continue to say the kind of news and analysis that we've been saying for 1,366 days. And I got to thank you incredibly for once again helping us to continue to do that another day, so that way we can continue to say, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $30 support from Marion Deemert, a longtime channel legend. And thank you very much, Marion, for that $30 support right there, and also helping to keep the channel running. And Marion said, no. And honestly, I'd agree with you. A big no to that peace deal right there. Honestly, I'll tell you, folks, like it's really a struggle these days to keep in the frustration, because obviously I have my own opinions myself. I try to hold them back to, keep ourselves as neutral as possible. The Enforcer obviously has his own opinions as well. He's trying to hold back as well. But the idiocy of these plans that are coming out are just like, it's hard to believe they're actually real. Like when I read them, I think surely this is like some type of fabrication or something. It has to be something fabricated, and then it'll seem to be corroborated, and nobody will say it's false. So we have to assume it's true, and we're like, okay, well, that's pretty stupid. Who the hell even wrote that? Like, it seems like a high schooler wouldn't even write something that bad, who doesn't know basically anything about geopolitics. But yet we have these educated people writing these stupid plans, telling Ukraine to give up, and they keep writing a surrender plan in different wordage each and every time. Like, we're not going to realize it's still the same plan, just dressed up in a different clothes this time. It's the same thing. They've literally, I think they've rewritten the same surrender plan at least 4 or 5 times over at this point, and they're trying to pass it off as something new when it's the same thing. So, it's just a joke. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree with that. Matthew has his opinions, and he doesn't really say them a lot. I have my opinions. I say them a bit more, I believe, on air, because I end up talking a lot more, probably too much sometimes, and so my opinion kind of slips out a little bit more. But many of y'all can tell we're not really that pleased by this. It's not really a good move. And I also got to say, I see some people pointing this out in the chat. Some people are like, educated. I would have to be honest with y'all. I'd have to disagree with Matthew on that, because Witkoff is educated on nothing in foreign policy. The guy what was he, Matthew, involved in real estate before this? And then he went straight into foreign policy with no prior experience or knowledge on it.
No. Hold on a second. Let's get this correct. And also, by the way, folks, just as a disclaimer, this peace deal here was worked on by many different people. We assume that Witkoff was working on it because he's one of the main envoys right now. So we assume he's worked on it, and obviously he had to in some form or another. But I'm reading through his education here real quick just to make sure that we got this right. And he got a degree in... so he has my degree. He has a bachelor's in political science, and he also has a law degree as well. So no, he is educated. I mean, that's educated. He has a graduate degree. He also got a bachelor's in political science. So he has a foundation, but I'm not sure if he really listened very well in his political science classes or not, because it seems like these plans he's coming up with seem to ignore the basics, in my opinion, and also it seems to ignore history too. But at the same time, though, we got to remember something, folks. The boss who's in charge is saying, I want a peace deal and I want it now. So even if it was Witkoff or whoever it was, whoever's in that position that Witkoff's in is going to be doing basically the same thing, because they're being told to go out and get a deal at all costs. So if Witkoff was replaced tomorrow and somebody else was put in his place, it would be the same situation. So I get people are frustrated with Witkoff, but at the same time, though, it's the orders coming from the top is the problem. They're giving out stupid orders. Instead of let's come up with a reasonable solution to end the war, they say instead, let's just end it at all costs right now. And that's not a way you do foreign policy.
Well, hell, I'll be honest with you, man. I mean, Witkoff doesn't really have that great of a record in the Middle East either. Remember when he was special envoy to the Middle East earlier in the year and he went over to Iran and they were like, well, actually, it's America that's the problem. He was like, oh, is that so? And then he started to even almost echo Iranian standpoints. Like, I will be honest with y'all, I don't really have a high opinion of Witkoff. I'd like, that's not even a political statement. I think that's just a factual statement at this point. On my personal opinion, I don't have a high viewing of him at all. He seems to be very gullible, and when you can send him anywhere. You could send him to communist China, and he'll come back with a little red book from Mao Zedong, and he'll be talking about the key points and pillars of communism. Like that guy will practically be told anything around the world and believe it from our top enemies. How silly can you be to be the special envoy of the United States, looking out for America's interests, and then go over to our enemies, listen to what they have to say, and almost completely mirror what they want or what they're saying? I mean, you'd have to be absolutely tone deaf and blind to do something like that, and yet he does it all the time.
But you see what I'm saying, though, that no matter who it was, if it's Witkoff or whoever it is, whoever's in that position is going to be facing the same problem. They're being told to get it done within like a short amount of time, like 4 weeks, get the peace plan done and finish it, and just simply say we've gotten a victory. That's what they're being told to do. So if you're in Witkoff's position and you got an order like that, you have two options. You can either go and throw Ukraine under the bus to get the deal done quickly, or at least attempt to get it done quickly, because Russia is viewed as the stronger power of the two in the eyes of the current administration, or you can walk away and resign. That's the other option. So if you choose to stay, you got to do what you were told. You got to go out there and try to secure a deal as fast as possible, and basically morals be damned at that point. You just need to get the deal done so that way you don't get fired.
I'll be honest with y'all folks, if I was given that sort of an ultimatum, I'd resign. I wouldn't tarnish my own reputation and involve myself and dabble in stupidity for the goofy ambitions of someone to say that instead of 8 pieces, it's 9, and it's not even 9, it's 0. Also, on top of that, I'm trying to think, folks, I can only think of 1, 2, 3. I can only think of 3 conflicts that have happened this year that the U.S. has actually been involved in any way where we supposedly negotiated a ceasefire. So where in the world's the number 8 coming from? Like, I'm thinking about that now. Like, if anything, it's 3. Because the Armenia-Azerbaijan thing, it was claimed by the president to have been done, and then in the conference, the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan were joking with Macron, you better come over and thank us, because without him, it wouldn't have been possible, because apparently the U.S. wasn't involved at all, and we just claimed credit for it. Apparently. Even both of those leaders were saying that. So, that would be number 4, but even still, we're getting nowhere close to number 8. We're still half of the way there, even if you include Armenia and Azerbaijan. So where in the world does the number 8 come from for us to say that the war in Ukraine coming to an end would be number 9? I mean, if anything, it might be number 5 or it's number 4. And even still, the other ones haven't ended either. The Israelis are saying they're about to bomb Iran again. So that war didn't stop. It got put on hold. Pakistan's saying they're going to kill everyone in the world, and India is also saying they're going to start up Operation Sendor against Pakistan again. So that one didn't end. That one's just on hold. And then Thailand and Cambodia literally ripped up the peace treaty that we made for them, which is the farthest we can go in foreign policy, by the way, to resolve something, is a peace treaty. That's literally the last step. Step 1 is war, step 2 is ceasefire, and step 3 is peace treaty. We made it all the way to peace treaty, the third and final step, and then they tore it up because we still didn't resolve the underlying issues, even in the peace treaty. So it's like, which one did we end? We haven't ended any of them.
History is not going to be kind to this policy right here. It's not going to be kind to it at all. Chamberlain also had the same mindset. And we always bring him up all the time, but he's literally almost an identical case study to this current decision making that's going on by the United States. Chamberlain believed that he was going to be somehow a miracle worker, and he was going to stop the Nazi Germans from going berserk and trying to do their dastardly plan that they carried out in World War II. In the short term, he looked like he was somewhat of a genius to some people because he did temporarily get the Germans to stop, at least for the moment, while Germany simply rearmed themselves and then started World War II. But at the same time, though, history was not kind to Chamberlain because he's known as one of the biggest fools in foreign policy that the world's ever seen. So history is not going to be kind. Maybe in the short term, maybe for the next year or so, he may look like he's a genius, the current guy in charge of the United States. But after 2 or 3 years, when the world devolves into absolute hell and chaos and actually goes into a real direct World War III, and we're actually fighting for real on the ground in Europe, history's not going to be kind, and the current guy is going to be holding the bag for it because he's going to be the one that led us right to this point.
You know, Chamberlain isn't known as a fool. He's known as the fool. I mean, like, whenever they talk about appeasement policies, he is the number one fool. Nobody can even think of another name rather than Chamberlain because he was the biggest fool ever seen. And everyone in the world, all over the world, as a matter of fact, in Britain, in France, in the United States. I mean, you can even watch the clips from the British Path, which are online, and they're saying this is meeting a great deal of controversy in Britain and France, the United States, and everywhere else, that they're appeasing the Germans. But peacemakers are always derided because people can't see their greater visions. That's what they said in 1938. Look what they were saying in 1939. Germany's invading Poland, and now the entirety of Europe has been plunged into war just next year. So where in the world did that go? That didn't go anywhere. And where in the world does the current president think he's going to go? He's going to end up nowhere. He's trying just like Chamberlain to build himself up into the best statesman and diplomat ever seen on the planet. Just like Chamberlain. Chamberlain had the same ambitions and ego as the current president does. And you know what happened is that backfired quite badly, and he ended up getting known, Chamberlain at least, as the largest fool that ever lived. He's the biggest sucker alive. Well, dead at this point, but at the time, he was the biggest sucker living at that point. And that's what's going to happen to this guy, because he cannot understand, at least in foreign policy with the Russians are going to keep this war going until they succeed. And even if they agree to this peace treaty, they're going to start the war up again in a year to continue on what they started. And they would have been able to get themselves a refresher at that point. They got themselves a little sip. They got reconnected to the global economy. All sanctions were lifted. They were able to import everything that they needed to produce tanks for the next several years if necessary to start another war with Ukraine. And then once they get all that set up and put in place, boom, right back to war, and it doesn't matter whether the sanctions are on them or not, because they were able to pretty much recover at that point and start it all over again.
And you know, the crazy part is this. The U.S. knows that Putin's ambitions expand beyond Ukraine. They know that. If you go back and look at the 28-point peace plan, what is, I think it's number 3 bulletin. I think it's in number 3 or 4. It says that Russia will not continue and to invade NATO countries after this deal is signed. Go back to it and take a look at that at the top right there. Is it number 3?
It's expected. It's not promised. It's just expected that they won't.
Well, why would the U.S. want to write that into a peace deal if they think that this is all about Ukraine? Because under what the current administration is saying is they're trying to make it out to be, well, you know, Putin's just feeling like he got encroached on by NATO and things like that. So that's why he invaded Ukraine. And it's just a little squabble between Ukraine and Russia. Then why are they writing that as number 3, that Putin's not going to invade NATO if they think that's really the case? Apparently, what the U.S. really thinks and what they know is what we're saying. They know that Putin's ambitions go well beyond Ukraine, and that's why they're writing it into the peace deal. And yet at the same time, they act like that's not the case, which is a joke.
Let's see here. I want to find this really quickly. Yes, here it is. This is a letter by FDR to the Chancellor of Germany. Many of y'all will know him as Adolf Hitler. And this letter was really interesting. Because it basically was what the current U.S. president's saying. And we all know how this one turned out, too, the whole Chamberlain appeasement deal. FDR wasn't involved in it directly, and America wasn't involved in it directly, but America still sent a letter in 1938 to Hitler. And basically this letter, in its summary, it's a little bit of a lengthier one, it's 2 pages, so I won't read the whole thing to y'all. It's basically saying that, that can you pinky promise Germany that you're not going to invade anyone else? So let me read to y'all the important paragraph of this letter. Are you willing to give assurance that your armed forces will not attack or invade the territory or possessions of the following independent nations: Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, the Netherlands, Belgium, Great Britain and Ireland, France, Portugal, Spain, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Poland, Hungary, Romania, Yugoslavia, Russia, Bulgaria, Greece, Turkey, Iraq, the Arabia, Syria, Palestine, Egypt, and Iran. End. And Hitler responded, "Yes, I promise I won't do that. I promise I will not invade any of the following countries in that list." And then just about 10 months later, he invaded Poland, which was on the list. And he also then invaded, right afterwards, France, and then he invaded Belgium and the Netherlands, and then he bombed Great Britain and Ireland. And then not long after that, in 1941, he invaded Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. He also invaded Denmark and Norway. He also got Hungary and Romania on his side. They also invaded Yugoslavia, and they also invaded Russia, Bulgaria. They also invaded Greece. They didn't invade Turkey. They didn't really touch Iraq. They didn't get a chance on that one. They didn't invade Arabia because they didn't get a chance. They didn't invade Syria either, but they did almost get to Palestine, and they did get into Egypt. And then we had to end up overthrowing the Iranian government as the allies because they looked like they were about to go Axis, but that's a story for another time. But still, basically everyone on the list that FDR sent to Hitler saying, "You pinky promise you won't invade these people," he practically invaded every single one of them on the list, except for a few. And that's because he couldn't get to them because we stopped them from marching that far. So, once again, the history speaks for itself. It's not like you have to be a genius to come up with the stuff. You just have to be able to read and comprehend what you're reading. And clearly right here, this didn't work in 1938. So what makes us think it's going to work in 2025? It won't. But anyways, with that, folks, a big thanks to you once again for support, Marion Deemer, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the final question of this segment. And then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news at large.
And this one goes to none other than Bobby, also known as LC39A, who puts in a very generous $100 support. And thank you very much, Bobby, for that massive super chat right there. And that is the largest one of the night as of right now. And thank you very much, Bobby, once again for that support. He said, "This is the Russian plan."
It almost is. I mean, borrow a few points, just maybe two of them. This is practically the Russian plan. If the Russians had it their way, they would go even farther. They would demand that Zelensky be handed over to their custody to be tried and so on. But this is practically the Russian plan. I would completely agree with you, Bobby. It's practically surrender, which is the Russian plan. And so, a humongous thanks to you for the unbelievably massive support and helping this channel to keep on rolling again tonight. And good to see you tonight. I hope you've been having a good night tonight. And I also got to say that we are as blown away by the stupidity of this plan as you are and everyone else is, I think, here on the channel at this point. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that quite well. And with that, folks, it's time for us to move on into the rest of our news for the night, which we still have a lot to go and very little time to cover it because we've been talking about this peace deal for about an hour, and also the question segment, which involved the peace deal. But moving on into the Caribbean and America's hunt for Captain Crag Sparrow, the hunt for Captain Crag Sparrow is still at a fever pitch, is the best way to describe it. The intensity of our actions within the area is high. We haven't conducted direct airstrikes against Venezuela yet, but with the amount of actions that we're conducting right off their coast, it's considered to be very close to a direct airstrike or airstrike campaign being conducted against Venezuela any minute now. When is it going to be conducted? Well, due to the complete unpredictability of the current administration's foreign policy initiatives, like y'all can see in Ukraine tonight, I don't really need to elaborate on that further. It's practically impossible to know when we're going to start striking the Venezuelans, because we have been poised and ready for a week now, and we still haven't struck them, and we might not ever strike them. Or we might strike them tonight. We have no clue. We did get to see earlier that 3 B-52H Stratofortresses had taken off from Minot Air Force Base en route to Venezuela for a show of force. Not long after, it appeared that their transponders turned off, along with a large number of other aircraft that were also within the area. We saw that transponders were also turned off of FA-18 Super Hornets and an RC-135W Rivet joint that was within the area of Venezuela's coast as well. We did get to see these FA-18 Super Hornets here on this transponder, Flight Radar 24, which is showing their transponders when they were on. And from what we understand, all of the FA-18 Super Hornets that were involved were from air squadrons that were on board the USS Gerald R. Ford, showing that the Carrier Strike Group's air arm is now present and operational within the area of Venezuela and is conducting active operations at this time. Meanwhile, we also heard that probing operations are still ongoing at this moment with a large number of aircraft within the area, including those FA-18 Hornets, which we were talking about earlier. Still, their transponders were turned off, but they were incredibly close to the Venezuelan coast. We have now heard again that the U.S. has reiterated that nothing is ruled out regarding Venezuela, and Maduro is not a legitimately elected leader. Everyone knows it. He's involved in drug trafficking and is wanted for $50 million. He knows it, and we know it, according to statements from the United States. Additionally, the U.S. Secretary of Defense has stated that there is a wide range of options against Venezuela, as the U.S. has designated Venezuela's alleged Cartel de los Soles as a foreign terrorist organization, giving the Pentagon a whole bunch of new options, according to the Secretary of Defense. This designation, announced by the Secretary of State, makes it a crime for anyone in the U.S. to provide support to the group, which Washington alleges is led by President Nicolas Maduro and works with the Venezuelan gang Trending Agua to traffic narcotics. Maduro denies the involvement. Also, by the way, I said Trending Agua is a joke. It's actually Trende Aragua, but still, you'll get the gist. Nevertheless, we are seeing that the United States is continuing to take a hostile rhetoric against Venezuela once again. And now, Matthew, unlike yesterday, where it was kind of a little bit up in the air who said what, now today it is actually clear that the U.S. is now gone back from Sunday when we said we're going to talk with them to now we're back to we're going to bomb them, all within 4 days.
Honestly, I think the reason why that is the case, I have a very strong suspicion that the War Department, also formerly known as the Defense Department, is not really communicating that well with the State Department. That would be my guess as to why there's such confusion going on about the Venezuela situation. It seems like people are not communicating the way they should be communicating, because how did they jump from let's talk to Venezuela and very openly said let's talk to them and see what Maduro has to say, then they jump right back to we're not talking to those bastards, we're going to go get them. It's like, how do we go from that within a matter of just a couple of days, unless they're not communicating properly?
I don't even know. I guess maybe they aren't communicating at all. But still, it looks like the messaging, at least for today, from the Department of Defense, has once again changed completely. Also, by the way, I see someone saying, "Don't you mean Secretary of War?" No, I'll explain why. It's unofficially the Secretary of War, and it's unofficially the Department of War, but it's not officially the name. And we go off of official naming conventions here, so we still are working with the DoD and the Secretary of Defense. Because to change the name, you actually have to have an act of Congress to change the name of the Department of Defense and the Secretary of Defense. That name is enshrined within the Congressional Act which founded the Department of Defense. And so the only people who can actually change the name of that executive agency would be the Congress by a congressional vote that would be approved by both the House and the Senate and then stamped by the president. So the president changed the name, but he couldn't change it officially. It was only unofficially. So it's unofficially the Department of War and unofficially the Secretary of War, but officially it still is the Department of Defense and the Secretary of Defense. So we're just going off of that for this point, because considering that this is more so just like a nickname. That's really what it is. Officially is a nickname, the Department of War and the Secretary of War. We're just going with the official name until it's changed by Congress, if it ever is. So with that, I hope that does address that at least the best I can. And I also see someone saying Congress is a technicality. Is that what you say when your rights get violated? Is that Congress is a technicality? Is the Supreme Court one too? Like, how far does that go?
Technicality is in what? Like, what do they mean?
It's just a technicality that they have to approve on the name change. That is not a technicality. That's the law. That's how that works. Like you don't sit there and say, well, a jury trial because you were charged with a crime is a technicality. That's not a technicality. That's the law. So we believe in following the law to the letter here on this channel. That's what the Republic was built on. It was a system of laws. And if the law says that the Congress has to be the one to change the name of the Department of Defense, then it is going to be the Congress that changes the name of the Department of Defense. And until they change it, we're still calling it the Department of Defense here on the channel. But moving on from that, and on up into Puerto Rico, we have been able to see, thanks to Ian Ellis on Twitter, probably one of the most interesting force dispositions that we have ever seen. This is 20%, according to Ian Ellis, of the entire deployed U.S. Navy, and it's all within Second Fleet at the moment. A quarter of the U.S. Navy that is at sea globally right now is in the Caribbean alone.
Sounds like a bad idea.
Sounds like a lot. Sounds like a great deal. So, let's get down into the breakdown of what we've got here, if I can even read some of this. The Gerald R. Ford's Carrier Strike Group is present within the area, along with its 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. Along with the Gerald R. Ford comes 9 squadrons of carrier air wings involving multi-role FA-18 Super Hornets, some Greyhounds, and also some helicopters as well. Additionally, we also have a larger amount of detached destroyers and cruisers that are also within the theater at the moment, not attached to the Carrier Strike Group, but still under the command of 2nd Fleet and Southcom. That involves a whopping number of 2 Ticonderoga guided missile cruisers, and also an additional 5 Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers. We also have 2 nuclear attack submarines within the area as well. On top of that, we have a littoral combat ship and 2 auxiliary support vessels, along with the MV Ocean Trader with its complement of special forces and helicopters on board. There are 5 Coast Guard cutters within the area, along with a U.S. Army support vessel and 4 U.S. Army helicopters that are attached to the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, or SOAR. On top of that, there are 10 F-35B Lightnings of the United States Marine Corps' VMFA 225, based out of Roosevelt Roads, along with 3 P-8 Poseidon patrol aircraft and 4 MH-60 helicopters of the U.S. Navy. On top of that, the United States Air Force has 6 MQ-9 Reapers present within the area, along with an AC-130J Ghost Rider that is currently around Panama. Outside of that, we also know that the United States Air Force has been conducting routine flights with C-5 Galaxies, C-17s, C-130s, C-148 Wolfhound, KC-130s, KC-135s, KC-46s, RC-135s, and E-3 Sentries, which have all been present within the airspace of the Caribbean and U.S. Southcom Command over the past few weeks. Also, we have seen the B-52H Stratofortresses from Minot Air Force Base, as well as Barksdale Air Force Base, have been involved in air operations within the area, along with some B-1 Lancers from Dyes Air Force Base in Texas. All on top of that is the USS Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group, which has the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit, BU, attached to it. Involved in the USS Iwo Jima Carrier Strike Group is the USS Iwo Jima LHD, along with the amphibious support vessels of the USS San Antonio and the USS Fort Lauderdale. Attached to the USS Iwo Jima is a squadron of 6 AV-8B Harrier 2s, about 12 MV-22 Ospreys, along with 4 AH-1Z Cobras, 4 CH-53 Super Stallions, and 4 UH-1Y Venom utility helicopters. In general, this is one of the largest naval and military buildups that we've seen anywhere by the United States of America, except for the 12-day war and Operation Midnight Hammer inside of the Middle East. And a lot of people are wondering, what is the U.S. doing? And Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so what is the U.S. doing? Because as you can see, we have a very, very, very large amount of U.S. military assets in the region, and in my opinion, based on my personal judgment, I would say that there's enough assets in the region to probably launch the attack that the U.S. was going to launch on Venezuela. So why are they not doing it? It seems like they're holding off for some reason, and why is that? 47% said that the U.S. is trying to intimidate Maduro for leverage, and that's why they're not attacking, while 36% said that they're simply exercising for the imminent attack, and that's why they're waiting. They're just simply practicing. And 6% said they're just trying to end the drug trade. And it looks like only 6% said that, so no one's really buying that very much. But exercising for an imminent attack, I thought, according to the U.S., this was child's play to go down there to Venezuela and do what they were about to do. Why are they needing to take so much time, weeks and weeks, to do exercises when they have literally overkill in the Caribbean? Right now, they could glass Venezuela and level the place if they wanted to, pretty much. So I think they're stalling for a different reason. I think they're stalling and hoping that maybe talks will break out. And I think this is mainly for intimidation at this point, because there's no reason why they're stalling and not attacking at this point. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say, I guess it's for leverage. This is the most expensive leveraging that we've ever conducted against a backwater nation in history. So I guess it's for leverage. But how much leverage do we really need to get the Venezuelans to fold? I think at some point we had already met the threshold to completely bend Venezuela's arm and get them to do whatever we want. And we've well surpassed that at this point. I mean, damn, look at this. I mean, we have 250 Tomahawk cruise missiles ready to fire at this moment, just in the U.S. Navy's abilities alone. That's not including all of the AGM-158s that the B-1 Lancers and the B-52s could fire off as well, which is also increasing the number by at least 80 missiles that we could fire. So we have about 330 missiles available to be fired into Venezuela in an instant. At one moment, we could completely overwhelm any of Venezuela's air defenses and lay waste to basically most everything in the country, military-based and governmentally based, all in one go. And yet we're doing nothing. So I guess this is some form of leverage, but this is incredibly expensive, and to have these forces just sitting around down there at the moment. And I don't really... I'd be entirely honest with y'all, this thing is just absolutely just messed up at this point. I wish we could walk away, because my instinct is still saying it's not a good idea to go down there and deal with Venezuela, because we're tying up a great deal of resources in an area that wasn't a big deal. But the problem is that we've made it into a big deal, because when we brought it up and we started to conduct actions against Venezuela, we put a giant glowing red target on Venezuela for Russia and China to go, hey, that's a way we can mess with the United States, is by arming Venezuela. And Russia's already made it clear that if we walk off, they are going to start arming Venezuela to the hilt if they can. And the Chinese will be there with them as well. They just haven't shown up yet. But if we walk off, China and Russia are going to be arming Venezuela. So now we can't back off. So while we were saying a while ago it would be best to back off because we have bigger fish to fry like Russia and China and Iran right now that could be coming down the pipe here soon, now we can't even say that, because now Venezuela is a big issue, because if we walk away, we've now opened Pandora's box, and if we walk off, Pandora's demons, monsters, and plagues and pestilence are all going to come flowing out of the box, and they're going to start plaguing the entire world. Basically, Venezuela is going to become a problem that is going to be very difficult to deal with in the future if we don't deal with them now. So now we have to deal with them. So now, and also on top of that, that's why I'm wondering, why are we now stalling at this point? Because now we have to deal with them. We can't walk off. We've made it into a situation that we have to address now, and we're still not addressing it yet. We're all just sitting down there and spending the money to sit around.
What about this? I just thought about this, because we're trying to figure out the root question here is, why is the U.S. not attacking? Because we have so many assets in the region. They could attack any day, any hour if they wanted to. They could pull it off. So why are they waiting? Here's another idea that we really haven't discussed before. What if the U.S. administration is doing this to get leverage over Russia, to force Russia to accept a peace deal with Ukraine? What if that's the logic behind it? Now, once again, the logic's not very solid, because for one thing, Venezuela is not that important to Russia that it would really create that much leverage to force them into a peace deal. But that might be the shallow logic that's being used by the United States officials to sort of think about the situation. Maybe that's why they're holding off, because they're trying to rush through a peace deal. That would also explain why the U.S. is trying to rush it through, considering we have all these assets sitting right off the Venezuelan coast. That would explain why they're trying to force Ukraine to agree to it before December is over with. So that seems like that could be a plausible theory right there. I'm not sure if it's true, but it could be plausible.
I mean, maybe that would be absolutely harebrained, honestly. But it's possible that they could be thinking like that. You know, honestly, it's highly likely they could be thinking like that. And that's just I can't say this. That is just stupid. I'm not even going to get into why that's stupid. We've been talking about that for all night. And also, we've got a load of news to cover and very little time to cover it at this point. So, unfortunately, we'll have to just walk off from this whole thing, because if that's what they're doing, I don't even know how that makes sense. Also, we saw that a giant conference center in Belém in Brazil burned down today. The footage from it was just kind of crazy, so I wanted to show it to you all here really quickly. We see people clearing out as fire extinguishers are being shot into the blaze in the background, and it appears that later the fire was just completely burning out of control. Very unfortunate to see.
Fire at the climate summit. That's an interesting place to have a fire.
Yeah, really kind of wild, honestly. We don't know if any people were injured or killed in that fire so far, but unfortunate to see nonetheless. Moving on out of Belém in Brazil, and I know I'm probably mispronouncing that, but moving on from that and into the United States of America, just to give you all a brief summary of the other diplomatic developments we've made today, the Vice President has stated in all-knowing wisdom, why don't you stop killing each other and start trading with one another about Ukraine? That kind of completely... I gotta say, folks, do they know nothing? Like I don't even mean to just go off, but Does this guy not know anything? Before the Russians annexed Crimea and the Donbass in 2014, the largest trading partner of Ukraine was Russia. They weren't fighting, they were trading, and then the Russians invaded them and that ended the trade. So it's a little bit stupid to ask, why don't they just stop killing each other and start trading? Because they were trading and then the Russians started killing Ukrainians and then the trade ended because of that. So I got to say, we got other geniuses coming down the pipe. If this guy is saying that the American education system is failing, at this point he's got to be a product of it, because how the hell can you get something like that mistaken? That's one of the given facts before the war in Ukraine started, is that Russia and Ukraine were economically connected like this. You can't even see what I'm doing with my hands, but they were connected like this before the war started in 2014. So what type of statement is that? Like that's like he doesn't even know anything about the two countries. Anyways, moving on from that. We also saw a statement by Newt Gingrich, actually, about the peace agreement, and this is what Newt Gingrich had to say about it. Any peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia which weakens Ukraine's ability to defend itself is in fact a surrender agreement which guarantees that in the next few years, Putin will overrun all of Ukraine. Ukrainian courage and patriotism should not be betrayed by Americans growing tired of stopping evil. Putin victory will be a stepping stone to a much more dangerous world. I would completely agree with that. Pretty much summed it up quite succinctly, I would say, in my opinion. Moving on out of Washington, D.C. and on around the world into South China, or the South China Sea specifically, we did get to see that the USS Washington aircraft carrier and carrier strike group is present in the area of the East Philippine Sea off of the coast of the Philippines. It also is within the area along with the USS Nimitz, which is still within the South China Sea at this moment. Moving on from that and into the Middle East, we got plenty of goodies out of the Islamic Republic of Iran today. One statement by the president of Iran stated today that some countries that appear to be our friends did not help us during the days of war, with the 12 Days War. Then we also heard the foreign minister today say as well that Russia helped us a lot during the 12-Day War, and after that we had even more cooperation than before. That's why I say we were even more prepared than in the previous war. So I gotta say, Iran is very confused. The president's saying that no one helped them out, and the foreign minister is saying that the Russians helped them out significantly. So who's right?
Who the hell knows at this point? Honestly, I'm not sure if Iran knows who's right either. And also, they really can't even, like. Also, they're bitching about people not helping them. They currently have a water crisis they're going through right now, and they're going to evacuate the entirety of Tehran, and nobody's helping them there either. Well, and also, what are they complaining about? It's like the only way they have any ammunition is because they get it from Russia. So I don't know what they're complaining about.
Man, Iran's just confused. They babble inconsistently. I think the lack of water is starting to impact their brain. But also, we were able to hear additionally from the Foreign Minister Argachi that today, in a formal letter to the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, we have declared that the Cairo understanding is no longer valid and considered terminated. Since the 12-Day War, IAEA inspectors have not been granted access to sites such as Fordow and Natanz, which were hit in the strikes, but they have been able to visit other sites. Grossi reached an agreement with Aragachi in Cairo in early September to resume inspections, and now the Iranians are suspending inspections effective immediately again today. So once again showing that some form of nuclear development is happening in the country, and they do not want the IAEA to be aware of it by their inspections. Then, the bombshell news came out today from the Iranian government. They are now going to be officially evacuating the government of Iran from Tehran. Iran must relocate its capital because the country no longer has a choice, according to President Massoud. He has warned that ecological strain has made Tehran unsustainable. They're not evacuating the 9.6 million people who live in Tehran, by the way. They're just evacuating the government. The rest of those people can just drop dead for the Iranian government's care. They don't really give a damn, but the government will move. We don't know where it's moving yet. I have a very strong feeling it's going to move to Isfahan, which is also a centrally located city within the Islamic Republic of Iran, and puts them in a somewhat more okay spot where they're not going to be threatened with larger conflicts breaking out, say on the Afghan-Iranian border, which have happened, or the Pakistan-Iranian border, which has happened, and also anything that might happen in the future with Israel or the United States, putting them closer to strikes from either one of those. So I have a feeling that they're going to be moving to Isfahan, but in short, the Iranians have screwed themselves. They have overused their water supplies within the area of Tehran for decades, with an ongoing drought also going on for decades, and they knew that the whole time and continued to use water like it was never going to run out, and then it ran out, and now they're crying victim because they mismanage their own water resources. This is once again a reminder to the whole world, folks, that pretending like natural resources are infinite is a very dumb idea because natural resources are quite fragile, especially with modern technology and modern means and abilities. We can lay to waste nature in the modern day quite easily across the globe. It's very important that we manage our natural resources because while human infrastructure and industry may be robust and resilient, natural resources aren't. And so if you start to run out of them, you can end up in a situation like Tehran. So that is a very strong warning signal for the state and local governments here within the southwestern United States, which we already know are kind of getting in that direction at this point on major water shortages on the by and large over the last decade. They need to be very observant and careful about managing their natural water resources because it's not infinite and it can run out, much like it did with Iran. Moving on from that, though, and out of that news in the Middle East, we also saw that the Israeli Air Force was present over southern Syria in a clip provided earlier today. Oh, someone strummed the banjo. Man, ring, ring, the banjo. I like that good old song, man.
Man, who's cooking?
Man, I don't even know. We didn't see any airstrikes conducted in Syria today or Lebanon, so we don't know why they were flying over southern Syria, but it was an interesting occurrence, to say the least. Moving on from that, it's now time for us to finally get on back into Ukraine. Also, by the way, Poland did state that they will be joining the Pearl Initiative to purchase U.S. weapons for Ukraine, and they'll be putting up $100 million. They're doing that because of the Russian attack on their railroad. So this is the farther than diplomatic response from the Poles. I got to be honest with y'all, kind of expected this to be what the response was going to be. I didn't expect the Poles to go off on the Russians and haul off on them. That was pretty much slim to none at this point. And so what they did is that they just threw more money into buying weapons for Ukraine. It's good. I mean, like, it's not bad, but at the same time, can we finally respond to the Russians directly attacking us? Is that too much to ask? Like, is that too much to ask anywhere in the world, even in Poland, that we actually respond to what the Russians are doing directly instead of doing this, like, rigmarole, beating around the bush stuff? Like, it's good that we're giving extra money to Ukraine, sure. But at the same time, they attacked the Poles. They didn't attack Ukraine. So the response was they almost killed a couple of dozen Poles. So let's give $100 million to Ukraine instead of defending the Polish people. Like, I don't know. I'm a huge amount of respect for Poland and Lithuania, specifically in Eastern Europe. Huge amounts of respect for both of those countries, but this is kind of a weak response. I'm not going to lie. It was a good one, but it was still weak. Moving on up into Estonia, they also stated that if Ukraine accepted the 28-point peace deal, they are practically cooked. But you can go and click on the link in the description below from the map to go see that one yourself. Meanwhile, we also heard that there has been major reductions of output in the Baltic and Black Sea ports for oil shipments because 3 out of those 4 ports are down. The shipments have fallen 3.7 times, or about 370%. And another Baltic port, in Ust-Luga, there has been a 40% decline compared to November of last year. The port of Novorossiysk has only partially recovered and is currently shipping roughly 3 times less oil than before the attack. The only major port showing an increase in shipments is Kosmino in the Pacific Ocean. Overall, over the past week, Russian total exports have fallen by 13% compared to the level a year ago by 30%. So it does appear the Russians are suffering as usual. Meanwhile, deep inside the Russian Federation in the Perm-Sverdlovsk Oblast border region, a train had a catastrophic derailment. That's what it looked like in the middle of the night, and I'll show you what the damage looked like in the daytime.
Dang, that's a lot of fire right there. Burning those rails up right there. Terrible.
Man, and look at the damage. Once they got some spotlights on it, that was quite significant, really.
They just took the bogies straight off and everything. The whole thing's in shambles and shatters and stuff.
Man, the whole thing is in tatters, man. It's like fabric, tatters, But moving on from that and on into the area of Ukraine, we also have a lot of news coming out of the front lines here. Moving on into Kyiv, we did get to hear that the Ukrainians have stated, or Zelensky has stated, that he is expected to discuss the current peace plan to end the war while presenting Ukraine's basic principles. And also the fact that he's going to be discussing this with the President of the United States makes it incredibly clear for people who were trying to dissuade this sort of a statement earlier that the President is 100% on board with the current peace plan and did approve it to be presented to the Ukrainians. Also, on top of that, apparently the Ukrainians, along with the United States, are simultaneously going to be trying to strengthen Ukraine's capabilities in air defense, at least according to the commander of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, or the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Oleksandr Syrsky. Moving on out of that news, we also saw in our location unknowns a really wild series of clips. An X-101 missile of the Russian Federation was actually being chased down by a Ukrainian F-16AM. Take a look at this. Here goes the missile. Right there.
Oh, wow.
And chasing it down is this F-16.
That's pretty sick. Did they eventually get the missile, by the way?
I never saw a clip confirming that they got the missile and shot it down. I think at some point they would have had to, but we never got official video confirmation for it. But here's another clip showing the close interception, or not really interception, but chase of the F-16 of the X-101 caliber. There goes the caliber. And here comes the F-16 right behind it at this point. Pretty neat to see. We don't know if they shot the missile down, but still a wild clip to watch. I never seen something like that before in any conflict. Also on top of that, we got to see the Russian casualty report for the day, which was somewhat decent.
Oh, they got one more Bobcat, by the way. Look at that. They brought it to 4002 right there. We have two. Not with two they can. Not with two, but tell us more.
Whoa, what the hell is that, T? It's a global Cambrian. That thing's from Camden. But anyways, moving on from that, Miss D, keeper of the records, has stated that troop losses for the 7-day average drops to 966. Highest cruise missiles in almost 2 months, at 9 special equipment in the past 9 days. GG. And GG indeed. And the casualty report is as follows. 890 Russian soldiers wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 2 APCs, 68 supply trucks, 1 main battle tank, 19 artillery pieces, 384 drones, 41 cruise missiles, and 1 Bobcat skid steer. All in all, it was a very good day, and a wonderful thing to see that the Ukrainians are continuing to hold the line and inflict high casualties on the Russians, who continuously attempt to push deeper into the state of Ukraine. Moving us on up into the northern part of the front, near to the city of Kupiansk, we did get to see Ukrainian armed forces, specifically the 3rd Heavy Mechanized Brigade, which is an armored brigade, conducting direct gun assaults with their tanks on the Russian forces. This is believed to be near to the area of Kupiansk, and we can see the tanks firing point-blank, high-explosive 125mm shells into the Russian positions directly lining the street. This has been a common tactic for Ukrainian armor throughout the majority of the war. It used to be a tactic for Russian armor until they began to be destroyed before they even made it to the Ukrainian positions. But the Russians, largely devoid of anti-tank equipment, especially for their infantry, see that they are very vulnerable to point-blank tank assaults by Ukrainian armor, like we're seeing in this clip by the 3rd Heavy Mechanized Brigade, or the 3rd Heavy Armor Brigade. And it does appear that one of the Ukrainian tanks has a small fire that's broken out near to the rear of the turret on a carry container. But the Ukrainian whips out a fire extinguisher and puts that out real nice-like.
I'm shocked they had that, to be honest.
Man, the Russians, man, they're like, safety last, work fast. The Ukrainians are like, safety first. I've been saying that for 20 years. And if I say put out the fire, I mean put out the fire.
It's still boiling a little bit, but it's been extinguished a little bit.
Crazily enough, they bailed out just from that fire. Safety first, as they say. We can also see this tank avoiding a Russian drone here. And booking it on out of there. But with that, that's the end of the clip right there, and still very interesting to see. Moving on from that and further down the line and into the area of Severonsky Forest, we also saw the Signum unit continuing to attack Russian logistics and vehicles within the area of the Severonsky Forest, including this Desert Cross ATV. And then they got the Russian instead. We can also see them here targeting a Russian main battle tank and a Russian infantryman that was sitting right in front of it. Now we can see them targeting another Russian infantryman who's running in between rail cars. Doesn't really look like he ran quick enough. This guy also didn't run quick enough. And that guy didn't either. And this guy was trying to hide behind a birch tree, but it looks like he ended up becoming the birch himself. We can also see the drones continuously, with pinpoint precision, hitting Russian infantry, including this guy trying to hide behind a tree. And this guy who was just kind of like laying around.
What happened to that, that bush camouflage that they were coming up with? You remember how the Russians had come up with like a mobile bush, like you just have them like roaming around and stuff like that? It was like a ghillie suit, but it looked like a shrub.
I don't know what happened to that, actually. We've never seen it in use beyond that one clip, so I think it was a once-off thing that someone custom made, and no one's ever made anything like that for or after.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird they'd showcase it too, and then not even use it. Like, I guess they just, I guess it was a concept. It was a concept of a plan, but it never really came to fruition.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. And moving on down into Pokrovsk, we also got to see more Russian equipment being attacked within the Pokrovsk area here in this clip. And we can see this motorbike getting hit directly, along with a couple of Russians that were running through an open street in an open field. That's never a good idea. And it looks like they...
Man, they were scattering like roaches.
Honestly. You can also see them getting targeted here as well, under an awning, and also in a garage, these Russian dirt bikes.
That was a shame, too. They're getting nicer dirt bikes these days. That's kind of surprising.
Yeah, they really are. They are getting nicer dirt bikes. That really is the case. Oh, I don't know what they just hit right there, but it was actually seen on the camera. And moving on from that clip, we can also see Russian forces being directly hit within some buildings here as well.
Putin said, achieve the objectives of the SMO at all costs, he said.
Man,
lose all your soldiers, he said. Try to conserve your ammunition, he said.
Try to conserve your life. Well, he never said that for sure. Like,
no, he didn't say that. He said, I don't care about that. Like, if it would save the tank, but, don't worry about the people.
He said, one tank is worth 500 men. Like, that's what he said. But moving on down into Velika Novoselka, we also saw the Ukrainian armed forces using AASM hammers provided by the French, dropped off of MiG-29s to conduct airstrikes on the Russians in Velika Novoselka. And we can see the MiG-29 roaring on in to drop the hammers.
The thing is roaring.
And there goes the hammers, and there goes the successful strikes on the positions. And there was one.
Ukraine's the only country in the world that has hammers more expensive than the United States military.
Man, honestly, man, you ain't wrong. like you ain't wrong.
These are French hammers, right?
Yeah, these are French hammers. They're actually really cool looking. I'll pull one up to show all y'all here. The AASM 250 hammer. Let's see here. These are the hammers.
Yes, that tubular hammer.
Yeah, you know what's neat is that some of the hammers are actually rocket assisted. So they kind of have an ability to fly for a limited period of time. I wish I could find that variant. I think it is the AASM 250 something. I forgot the exact name of it, but it is quite an effective air-to-ground ordnance. They were actually used a good bit, from what I understand, in Libya in 2011 as well by the French Air Force to great effect. That's really where they got their first baptism by fire, and it appeared that the hammers worked wildly well. So very interesting sort of a weapon system. But moving on out of Velika Novoselka, it is time for us to move on into the center of Ukraine, as we did get to hear that unfortunately, due to last night's attack, the IAEA reported that 3 Ukrainian nuclear power plants reduced output and lost connection to high-voltage transmission lines due to yesterday's shelling. This concerned the South Ukraine Khmelnytsky and Rivne nuclear power plants. Sorry, I had to pronounce that one out. Whose generation has already been limited since early November. So it does appear that further Russian attacks are once again causing disruptions to the Ukrainian nuclear power grid. Moving on from that, though, it's time for us to get on into Kyiv and cover the speech from the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, here on day 1,366 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the speech by the President of Ukraine. Speech!
Бажаю здоров'я. Сьогодні у мене була зустріч з представниками Сполучених Штатів, вагома делегація і дуже серйозна розмова. Американська сторона надала свої пропозиції, пункти плану, щоб закінчити війну. Їхнє бачення. Ми з перших днів війни займаємо одну надзвичайно просту позицію. Україні потрібен мир, і справжній мир, такий, який не зламає третє вторгнення. Достойний мир, щоб умови були з повагою до нашої незалежності, нашого суверенітету, до гідності українського народу. І ми саме такі умови маємо забезпечити. Я окреслив, що саме для нас принципово, і ми домовились, що команди працюватимуть над цими пропозиціями, щоб це було по-справжньому. Ми не будемо робити різких заяв і налаштовані на чітку, чесну роботу. Україна, Сполучені Штати і наші друзі та партнери в Європі та в світі. Цими днями багато розмов з європейськими лідерами, багато переписки. Я дякую всім друзям України за підтримку. Сьогодні я говорив з президентом Фінляндії Стубом. Ми координуємо наші зусилля, постійно на зв'язку з іншими лідерами, президентом Франції. Я розраховую найближчими днями говорити з президентом Трампом. Ми свідомі того, що сила Америки та підтримка Америки можуть наблизити мир реально, і ми не хочемо це втратити. Ми розуміємо також і те, що в Росії немає реального бажання миру. Інакше вони б і не починали цю війну. Багато оцінок є, цілком справедливих, що Росія увесь цей рік намагається зробити тільки одне, а саме відкласти санкції та виграти ще час для війни. Америці по силам зробити так, щоб російська налаштованість на закінчення війни нарешті стала серйозною. Буду заради цього працювати і надалі. На 100% увесь мій час саме цьому зараз присвячений. Україні потрібен мир, і Україна робитиме все, щоб ніхто в світі не сказав, що начебто це ми зриваємо дипломатію. Це важливо. Так само важливо, і щоб в Україні внутрішня ситуація дозволяла бути нам сильними назовні. Ввечері був на зустрічі з фракцією парламентської більшості. Були різні питання, були й чутливі питання. Але домовленість, вона очевидна, кожен має працювати на Україну. І так буде. Парламент воєнного часу повинен бути дієздатним парламентом. І я дякую кожному, хто допомагає цю дієздатність забезпечувати. І будуть рішення. Будуть, які допоможуть цьому. Завдання номер 1 для всіх – конструктивний дипломатичний процес з Америкою та усіма партнерами. Обов'язкова стабільна підтримка для нашої армії та для всіх наших запланованих оборонних операцій і діпстрайків. Дипломатія та оборона однаково захищають гідність нашої держави, гідність нашого народу. Ще одне. Сьогодні весь день триває пошук людей під завалами будинку в Тернополі, по якому вдарила російська ракета. Загалом цей удар тільки по одному Тернополю забрав життя 27 людей. Мої співчуття усім рідним і близьким. Доля ще 17 людей залишається невідомою. ДСНС України та всі необхідні служби працюватимуть стільки, скільки потрібно. Я вдячний усім, хто залучений до цієї роботи. Я дякую усім, хто зараз з українцями, хто працює на державу і захищає українські інтереси. Життя наших людей. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
And with that, that was the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky. And I got to say, Zelensky is getting good at saying two things, facts and glazing. And he's getting the holy combination put together there to be able to try and get a point out without also getting blasted because it's factual. So with that, it's time for us to move on into the second segment of this stream, where we get to talk to all of y'all. And boy, folks, what a night it's been. Oh, man, I'm telling you. Man, I gotta tell y'all, folks, the world's getting rough enough out there that I'm about to just, like, revert into Rodney Dangerfield naturally from some of this stuff. But nevertheless, we still all made it through another day together here on the channel. And I got to thank you all for sticking it through with us as we cover this news and getting to listen to all of the major developments of the day. At the peak tonight, there were actually 13.5 thousand people here. And over the course of the stream, 85,000 people have already watched. We're hugely grateful and appreciative to all of y'all. And we always like to shout out those numbers every night so that way you all know that while we are seeing numbers here in the control room, I know that behind each and every single one of those numbers is a very interesting interesting and cool person. Someone who's actually spending the time to be invested and interested in the ongoing developments and issues that concern our republic and our sphere of influence and our allies every single day around the world. And we are entirely honored and appreciated to know that so many well-minded and like-minded individuals come here onto the show every single night to be able to get their fill of the news each day, so that way they continue to ponder and think about the very things that concern our nation in the modern day and age, like there was over the course of this last 24 hours and the next one and the ones after that. And I'm going to thank you all so much once again, and in honor of that, and a huge thanks to all of y'all, and an appreciation of y'all's time, we will be spending the rest of this show getting to talk to all of y'all and answer any questions that you'll have. We'll, of course, be getting through the super chats first, and then the live chats after we get through all of the super chats. So, Matthew, I understand that before we even get to that, we have one last poll to address. And, Matthew, what are people saying about that poll, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So the poll question says, how do you see the Ukraine war ending in the future? The big underlying question right here. And what do you think in the audience? 52% said Ukraine destroys the Russian economy and wins the war that way, while 28% said Putin gets ousted and the war ends by default. And 13% said a U.S.-imposed forced peace treaty will end the war, and only 8% said Russia wears down Ukraine and wins the war on the front lines. And for me, I would personally say this one's a bit tricky. I would tend to lean toward the option that Ukraine destroys the Russian economy, but at the same time, we've gone over this before, Russia is getting external economic support from China and other countries that may keep them afloat, at least in the short term, with that external aid. So that's a bit iffy. It's also very possible that Putin does get ousted, because while China and these other countries are supporting the Russian economy, the Russian civilians are not getting that support. It's going mainly to the military and also mainly to the government, and the civilians are suffering a big league. So it's possible that maybe the citizens get so fed up that they'll oust Putin. That's also possible as well. So I'll be honest, I'm actually a bit unsure and undecided on this one. I'm in between the two middle options right there, but not totally sure. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that, that's a good one. I'd have to go generally with the 52%. The Russian economy, if it is destroyed, the Ukrainians get to win the war, whether Putin is thrown out or not. Because if the Russians have no way to financially afford the war, to pay the men at a minimum, there's no way for them to continue a war. Wars are fought by the logistics as much as they're fought by the men on the front. And so if they run out of money, shells or ammunition or guns, the war is over for them largely. So I'd have to be with the 51%. I do believe that the Ukrainians continue their campaign against the Russian industries that produced a large part of their economic output. I think that they can produce a victory out of that in the long run. So I would have to be with the 51%. But with that, it is time for us to move on into those questions. Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping right into our first super chat, our last super chat segment here. This one's going to go to none other than Ryan Courtney, and Ryan puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, good sir, for that massive 50 right there. And once again, helping to keep the channel running through these trying times, and we do appreciate that very much from none other than Ryan. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Ryan, and helping this channel to keep on running. It's folks like you who make this channel possible and help us to keep this thing rolling all the time. And we're greatly appreciative to folks like you, because you help us to be able to keep the wheels of the Lee Spring Army turning and burning. You help us to be able to oil them up so that way they roll smoothly through the news every day and through every year for the large part. You know, it's something crazy to think. Huh?
Hey, yo, oil them up. What your wife?
Hey, no Diddy. No Diddy.
Hey,
like,
yo.
Man, hey, yo.
Hey, yo. They don't sell bulk packs at Costco. I want to make that clear.
Man, I didn't say baby oil. I meant like motor oil and stuff. Like that's not what I meant, man. That's not what I meant. Don't hit me. But beyond that though, you help us to be able to keep this thing rolling. And you know something, folks, that I gotta say this, folks. Me and Enforcer Matt, because there wasn't a short war video to make today, we actually went wandering around for a minute, because you know we told you all that we were trying to get to Salt Lake City so that way when we had some time off air, there was something to do when we were off air. And Matthew and me did two separate things today, and I thought I would share this with you all because I know Matthew would love to talk about his experiences, and I know I'd love to talk about mine myself. Matthew actually went to the Bonneville Salt Flats today, and I went on a trip to downtown Ogden. So Matthew, would you like to tell the folks about your stories and journeys to the Bonneville Salt Flat?
Yes, I will indeed. Right here, I was actually going to save this one right here. I was going to put a video on Patreon. I was actually made content while I was out there for Patreon because it was so cool. I was like, I gotta make a little short video about this while I'm out here. So I have a video in the works, but I got to edit the thing first. It's going to be very short and it's going to be for Patreon, and then we'll show it on the live stream too after that. So it was a very interesting little drive out there. I drove all the way from our place in Salt Lake City all the way out there to the Bonneville Salt Flats. I first stopped, show them the rest area out there. It's like down there toward West Wendover a little bit. There's like a rest area somewhere over here. Like, you just gotta actually go back down there. This is too far down. There's like a rest area down the way. Scroll on to the right. You'll see it in just a second. Keep on going. It's a little ways down. I think that's it right there. I stopped here first because I wasn't sure where I was going really. So I stopped there and I walked out into that expanse. And I actually took some pics of it, by the way, which I can grab real quick so that we can show the audience real quick. And I'll have to go grab those while I'm talking here, which is a little bit interesting. But this was a very cool rest area right here. They let you walk straight out onto the salt flats from this spot, and it feels like you're on the moon. It doesn't even feel like Earth anymore. It feels like you're walking on a foreign planet or something. And it really looked just like that, actually. It looked like these little salt veins right here going through everything. So that was very fascinating. But let me get y'all the pictures real quick. I'm trying to get the pictures here. They're the best to show y'all the surface and stuff because it is phenomenal. It's probably the wildest place I've ever been on the whole planet has been the salt flats. It feels like you're on Mars or something. So let's see here. Let me grab a couple of these photos and you can start showing these to people. And let's see here. Our first one here is going to be of the moon's surface. Also, filibuster for just a second, Andrew, so that way I can get these photos because it's taking a second to get these sent.
And you can see here when it rains out there on the Bonneville Salt Flats, it practically turns into a giant mirror. It's really neat. And another thing that's also really interesting is that you can see right here, the edge of the, I believe that would be the Great Salt Lake, or it just rained a lot in the Salt Flats, one or the other. I'm not really sure which. I don't know a great deal about the Bonneville Salt Flats myself, rather than it's made of salt, and it's practically perfectly flat, which makes it great for conducting land speed record tests. But Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so show them the 4 pictures I just sent you right now. I sent you 4 different pictures. Really, like, show them mainly the one of the surface of the place because the surface of the ground out there is remarkable, like how this looks real quick. Are you showing it, by the way, because I can't see it on my end?
Yeah, it's the second one.
So as you can see right there, the ground looks like the surface of the moon almost. It's really, really wild. There's just salt veins all through that whole area, and it's like a hard surface on top of it. It's like hardened salt, and it's really strange. Also, show them a picture of the salt little piece I picked up. Like, it's a little piece of salt right there. This was little. You could literally pick these up pretty much anywhere right there. You could just grab a piece of salt off the ground, and I guess this is considered like sea salt or something. I'm not really sure what type of salt it's considered. I'm not even sure. Can you even? I didn't eat it, by the way, but can you? Is this edible or not?
Is Bonneville salt
I wasn't going to try it. I can tell you that, but I mean, I'm curious to know if it's edible.
edible? So it is technically sodium chloride, but there's a lot of impurities in it, so it's not advised.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to try it. I mean, I was thinking there's people stepping on this stuff. Also, I don't just eat salt. I'm not like the salt monster off of Star Trek or something like that. I don't need salt that much of it. I'm not trying to have a heart disease or something. But also, by the way, show them the sign of the Bonneville Salt Flats. I actually went out to the Speedway because it was right down the road. I didn't know you could just drive onto it. Like, you can apparently just drive out there, and that's what I did. I just drove straight out there and right onto the thing. Everybody was going down the way. It was literally the Speedway where they set the land speed records out there. The Top Gear's been out there. I mean, everybody's been out there. I've been trying to get out to these Bonneville salt flats for years. I've been wanting to go see this for a long time, and it was like checking a bucket list item off today. I even did a little run down the way, a little short little run, and it was very fascinating to see that. The whole place is just flat. It's just wild. It's like the best way I can describe it is like a Minecraft super flat world or something. That's my best reference I got. But it is wild, though. Like, you really have to stand out there and just soak the thing in for a minute and just stand there and look around because your mind just doesn't want to comprehend what you're looking at. It feels fake.
Isn't this where Squidward ran around in a circle and then he, like, balled up on the ground and went, "Future!" Like, isn't this that area?
Honestly, man, it could be. But the fascinating part on top of it is this. Technically the rest area, that's technically not the Bonneville Salt Flats, even though it looks like it. The Bonneville Salt Flats is specifically a little patch of area where the actual speedway is right here with the signs at. That's the actual Salt Flats itself, is that right there. There's other spots that are salt beds, but it's not the Salt Flats, which I didn't know that until I got out there. So the Salt Flat area here, the ground is compacted and you can drive on it unless it's wet. If it's wet, you're going to get your car bogged down and stuff like that, and you're going to get stuck, and it's very expensive to get your car out of there. So you can't drive on it when it's wet. But I think they'll hold even races out here. They hold events. You can go out here and watch and stuff like that. I think they charge for events, though. I think you have to pay for it. But it was so cool, though. Like, I'm not lying, not exaggerating. That was the coolest thing I've ever seen anywhere on Earth so far, has been the Bonneville Salt Flats.
So while Matthew was on the Bonneville Salt Flats, which he was showing a load of pictures, and there's some pictures that he sadly cannot show, but they went hard. Believe me, they were really cool looking pictures, but we can't show them for OPSEC reasons. It was of like his car and stuff, and out there on the flats, and it like the pictures when they came back, it literally looked, folks, like it was a car commercial advertisement sort of a deal that they would put on TV.
It was. Also, by the way, for everybody mentioning this, I did know that salt would corrode your car very badly. When I got out of here and I drove all the way back to Salt Lake, I immediately went and got a pressure washer from one of those little like self-service car wash places, and I did a whole like deep cleaning of the undercarriage and things like that, because you can't leave that salt on your car. If you do, it'll corrode the hell out of pretty much all the metal under your car, and it'll ruin your car. Your brake lines will get corroded. Everything's going to get corroded, and it just ruins it. So if you drive on the thing, you got to go through the effort of spraying your whole crap off your car and everything when you get done with it. But that wasn't too bad, though. It was like a small little bit of effort to go on it. It was worth it, though. I would do it again.
And really quickly, folks, I have to try and load up all of my pictures that I got of some really cool stuff that I did today, because while Matthew was doing that, I was off on my own adventure. So it's basically like a Top Gear episode where one group went off and did one thing and then someone else went off and did another. That's basically what was going on my end today. So let me see if I can show this to y'all, and I can. So let me start uploading some of the stuff. So while Matthew was doing that, I decided, as many of y'all would know, this is very the enforcer sort of a deal, is I got on the train that goes through the city, which is the front runner, and I rode it to Ogden, which is up here. It's the city north of Salt Lake City. I consider Ogden, Salt Lake City, and Provo to all be a part of the Salt Lake City metropolitan area. But it's basically completely different cities when you actually drive around here, but basically all one big city, because they're all interconnected. So I hopped on the train, and I rode it on up to Provo, and I took a couple of pictures here. This was actually a really neat deal, and I'll load them up in blocks here on the Discord so that way I can show them to y'all. Matthew should be seeing them, and they should be. Here we are. So it was a little overcast today. In the Salt Flats, it was actually sunny, which is kind of cool. But over here in Salt Lake City, it was actually overcast and raining, and that means it's snowing up in the mountains. And so I rode the front runner up to Ogden, and these were some of the pictures that I took right outside of Union Station. So that's Main Street in downtown Ogden. And then when you turn around, boom, Union Station. If I'm not mistaken, this was actually a Union Pacific station in Ogden, and this would eventually go up the Wasatch Grade to Evanston, Wyoming, and forward from there. But it was really cool, because one thing I didn't know, folks, when I came here, I knew that there was a railroad museum attached to the Union Station here, but there are actually 7 different museums within the old Union Station in Ogden. And so I went inside, and the main hall is preserved in its original style that it was in during the times of the Union Pacific, when it was actually used as a train station. So that's the main concourse of the train station right there in that picture. And Matthew says Ogden's all right, but I'm about to show you why Ogden.
Ogden's all right.
I'm about to show you why Ogden was really cool, because I went here for trains, but I wandered around, folks, for a second, and then I saw something that was incredibly neat. And let me go get the best pictures I can get of this stuff, so that way I can show it to y'all. They actually had, believe it or not, and this is just the craziest thing, because out of these 7 museums, they practically had a museum appealing to any interest. They had a car museum, the Browning Kimball Car Museum, which took up one wing of the building. So I walked in there, and there was a really nice old gentleman at the front door, and he was like, "Oh, welcome in. If you have any questions, let me know." And I was like, "Thanks." I was like, I didn't want to tell him this, but I was like, "I don't really have any questions because I don't know a damn thing about cars. I just like the ones that look cool, and that's it." So, I didn't really have a lot of questions, but I was like, "Oh, thank you, man." And he was a really nice guy. But moving on into the museum, they didn't have just any cars in the car museum, folks. They had classic cars. And when I mean classic cars, I mean the ones from the 1910s to about the 1930s. So they had cars like this in there, which are really kind of like my deal if I ever go and look at like antique or vintage cars. I really like these. And these were well kept. I mean, they were insanely nice looking. And they had every single type. This is a 1926 Lincoln. This was a 1929 Pierce Arrow. That's a company that's defunct now. They also had this one, which is also a Lincoln as well. They also had this Packard. This is a very, very early Packard from the 20s. And they also had, oh, I missed the last one there. They also had this 1934, I believe, Cadillac, which was in this really nice, like, coffee brown kind of a color. Really, really nice looking. They even had, I'm going to show y'all this one. This one was honestly cool, but I didn't really know if y'all would want to see it. So let me get this up here really quickly because this one was actually insane. They had the Oldsmobile. You know when people like see an old clanker and they're like, damn, you got an Oldsmobile. Well, they had the 1901 Oldsmobile. This is literally Oldsmobile. Like, this is one of the first automobiles in America. It almost doesn't look like one, really, but they had one. And now the tires on it and the rims were reproductions, but the rest of it, from what I understand, is either authentic or the entire thing is a reproduction of an original early 1901 Oldsmobile. But that was still really damn cool. I was like, that is just the coolest thing. Like, this was like the mobster mafia car museum. That's what it felt like. It was just so cool.
It looks pretty cool, I will say. I will say this, like, I see a lot of people asking, how is Salt Lake as a whole? I'll be honest, the state of Utah is a very fascinating state because they have so many different environments in it. Like, for example, you see the Salt Flats, that's a massive area in the state. Like, that's a huge area out there. Like, you drive through that part and there's basically nothing out there because a Dugway that pretty much has all the military sites for pretty much all the area in front of the Bonneville Salt Flats towards Salt Lake is pretty much all Dugway's land, so it's all military. You can't go on it, but the Bonneville part you can go on. But the fascinating part is they have that like salt flat area. Also, by the way, Andrew, show them the pictures of the mountain with the snow on it. This is I just sent them on Discord, by the way, but this is the mountain pictures right here showing the snow. And let me know when you have them pulled up because I can't see it on my screen either.
Oh, it hasn't sent yet. I'm still waiting for it.
I know it's above it's above the Bonneville Salt Flat pictures.
Okay. Oh, yeah, these, yeah.
Yeah, so this right here is how it looks up in the ski areas, like up in the mountains above Salt Lake. So you have a mountainous, snowy environment that's snowing literally right now, which is pretty cool to say the least. Very beautiful area up there. You can go from that to the valley, which is Salt Lake City proper, and be in the city. Then you can go out west and be in the Salt Flats, which is another insane environment. Then you can go north, and you're basically looking at a mini ocean with the Great Salt Lake. And then you go down south in Utah, and you get to the desert. So you basically have everything. Like, Utah basically has every environment, depending on what direction you're traveling. You can pretty much go to anything within a couple hours drive, pretty much.
Yeah, it is really one of the coolest places. And also, folks, continuing the Ogden stories, because it doesn't end with the car museum, folks, and it doesn't end with the trains either. Then I was wandering around, and I remembered that the lady who gave me the ticket, and also another thing that's kind of crazy around here, folks, is that everybody says this to Matthew and me. Oh, you must be a voice actor, or are you a singer, or do you do radio, or are you on TV because of our voices? Which we never got those compliments in Alabama, mind you all. We never heard that from a soul in Alabama. But out here, everyone asks that, which is really interesting. It's a very kind compliment. Really honored to get it. It's good to know that our voices sound smooth. But we never got those compliments before. So honestly, flattering to hear that so many people say that across all of Salt Lake. But anyways, I then remembered, folks, that there was a gun museum. Folks, this Ogden Union Station was appealing to my Tylenol-addled brain when I went here today because it had a railroad museum, a car museum, and a gun museum all under one roof. All under one roof. All three of them are in the same spot. I mean, for someone like me who's into old cars like the ones from the 1930s and 20s, and for someone like me who's into trains, and someone like me who's into guns, this Union Station Museum had everything that I could have ever wanted. And you wouldn't believe it, folks. It was on my favorite gun designer ever, John Moses Browning. The John Moses Browning Gun Museum is in this train station. If y'all don't know, John Moses Browning was actually a Mormon. And that's why this museum is in Utah, is because he's a Mormon. So a little bit interesting with that. But beyond that, it had just about every example of firearm that John Moses Browning ever designed in this museum, some version of it, and it was cool. I mean, look at the little shadow box displays that they have for these guns. I mean, that just, oh man, it was so cool looking. I was like, wow. I was like, this is just the neatest thing. And they also had a giant demonstration bar on display, a BAR, Browning Automatic Rifle. They had one on display with real bars behind it, and they had loads of different variants of the bar, which is the Browning Automatic Rifle. They also had a Browning M2, a Browning M1917, a Browning 1919. They even, of course, had the bar. Again, they had a million bars in this museum. It was just the coolest thing ever. Like here you can see two more iterations of the BAR. One of them, I believe this one is one of the prototype BARs, and this one is one of the first BARs. I think that would be a 1917 model of the BAR. I'm not really a huge expert on it. They didn't have a Colt monitor, sadly, which is the FBI's version of the BAR, which is super cool, but they didn't have one of those. But, you know, this museum practically had everything else. They even had the pistols. They even had the little cute 25 caliber Browning autos. Like those little ones right down there. They had those. They didn't have a Browning, well, they didn't have a Colt 1903, which is a little sad. I'm a big fan of those. But still, they had everything else. I mean, it was the coolest thing ever. And then, once I got out of that museum, folks, then it was time to go on to the Creme de la Creme, which is what I actually got there for. And luckily, I got to this right before the train arrived to take me back down to where I'm from. I can't say where I'm from for OPSEC reasons, but let me show y'all what was outside. Like, let me just get all this loaded up here really quickly. So, let's see here. I'm only gonna pick the best and the brightest. So let's see here. And then, yeah, that ought to be it. So let's let all these load here, and then I'll show you all this. So this was all the museum, and I'm going to make sure, yeah, all the good ones are here. So went outside, and the Railroad Museum is outside of the Union Station. They had a nickel plate road Alco. Alcos are some of my favorite transition era, first generation diesel electrics. I like the sound of them. I like the look of them. They're really cool. They're very unique. They had one in one of the best railroad liveries ever, the Nickel Plate Road. They had one out here in great condition. So I wandered around, took loads of pictures of it. Of course, you had to. It's just really cool looking. And then also, this was the view, by the way, from the back platform at the Union Station. And you get to look out into the old Union Pacific yard that was here at Ogden. That's at the foothill of the Wasatch Grade, basically. So very big historic thing here. This is the beginning of the Wasatch Grade to Evanston, Wyoming. Then they also had this Western Pacific. I'm thinking it's a GP35 or a GP40. It's actually an RS65, apparently. Got that wrong. I've never heard of an EMD RS65, but I'll have to look into that. It looks like a GP35 or a GP40 to me, but it was in the Western Pacific paint job, which also goes hard. I thought that was a great paint job. I was like, that is really cool. I'm not a big fan of the Western Pacific, but I like their paint jobs. They're pretty neat. Then I took another picture of it, and then, folks, this was the coolest thing in the museum. They had a Union Pacific GTEL. This was the only, if I remember correctly, engine that ever ran on American railroads that did not run off of diesel electric power. It ran off of a gas turbine. So basically a jet engine. They had a massive jet engine shoved in this thing, and they would feed it, I believe it was a bunker C oil or linseed oil. And this thing went. This one engine here could pull close to what is about a modern-sized, well, not really a modern-sized train because those are very variable in length, but the thing had a massive horsepower. I think this one engine had about 6,000 horsepower or something like that in it. I mean, insanely cool, and also it's in the EMD streamlined body design. So just super cool. If y'all don't know, these things were actually banned in LA because the exhaust from the gas turbine or the jet turbine in this engine, it is so hot that if this train ever stopped under a highway or an interstate bridge, it would actually melt the asphalt on the bridge. So they had to ban them from running in Los Angeles because they would do that so often that it became a huge issue. And then, last but not least, they had the SD45T tunnel motor from Southern Pacific and the Rio Grande, and they also had a Centennial a DDX40, I believe is what it is, from Union Pacific as well. I mean, it was just the coolest museum. I mean, like Mr. Mega said, the Enforcer goes hard on Tylenol, and I'm popping Tylenol like perks. I'm just kidding, by the way. But
Man, I
beyond that,
go hard on petrol fumes. I'm like the gas fumes and the petrol. Like I go hard on petrol fumes. I'll be honest. Like I'm a car guy through and through. I must admit. And the Bonneville Salt Flats is like a place for car lovers. They got to go see it at least once in their life because so many land speed records have been set there. I think the fastest. Let me check that real quick. Let's see. Is the fastest land speed record in Bonneville? I think it still is.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh dang! So it was outdone. It used to be Bonneville, but it was outdone by the Thrust SSC, which was done in the desert in the UK. So it wasn't. Dang, they took it. The Bonneville Salt Flats had been the site for many other important records, though. For example, the fastest land speed record in the United States for a wheeled vehicle at 722 miles an hour, which is way faster than I've ever gone. In 2008. And also the fastest piston-driven car in the world at 470 miles per hour. Honestly, I'm kind of fascinated. I kind of want to do the 800-mile-an-hour Thrust SSC. Like I don't know how that feels to go 800 miles an hour on the land. That must be wild. One mess up at 800 miles an hour and you're cooked in like a half second. Like you're cooked in a millisecond. Going that fast. That's crazy.
I think you're cooked as quickly as the people in the Titan submersible at that point. I mean, I think that's like literally like death so quick you can't even comprehend you messed up.
Yeah, I think so, honestly. Also, by the way, I see everybody saying, well, how fast you go, Matt? Fast enough for me personally. But, I'm a speedster. I like speed. But at the same time, though, I always like to play it safe. I'm a safety first type person, to say the least. So, safety first. And also, the Lotta can only go so fast. I mean, the Lotta's only got about 80 horsepower. So, you can push it hard, but it's not going to go any faster than it wants to. So, that's the thing. But I would love to see like a real car that has like some real horsepower behind it do an actual speed run on the salt flats. Like I would love to see that if someone like had a vehicle like that, because just driving on that surface, it is like super flat. Like you can pick up some speed on it, and I'm sure somebody could just zoom a car with like 1,000 horsepower or something, like a Supra or something on that. That would probably be wild.
That probably would be pretty wild, honestly. Dude, honestly, man, like I would be interested in doing that. Like I'm not a huge car person, but that would be really cool. And also, one last thing, folks, one last thing. When it was almost over, like, and I took this picture right here, and this is probably the craziest picture that I think I've ever taken as far as the story. At this point, it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon in Ogden or here in Utah. And I was taking some pictures. I was taking my last pictures because I knew the train was going to be coming here soon. And this was the train. The train was literally pulling into the station, which is a block down from this Union station that doesn't use the same train station, but it was a block down, and it went by me at about like 30 miles an hour. I snapped this picture of the train, and then I went back into the museum, bought a cool little poster. I'll have to show you all that sometime. But bought a cool little poster. It was $5, so it was a great deal. And then I walked right out of the Union station, a block over to the left, got right on this very train right here in this picture, and then it started rolling right back down towards the Provo way, and a little while later I got off at my stop. Really met some cool people on the way too. I met a guy who was basically like Anthony Bourdain. He had traveled around the world on like paid tours for folks. He would do the tours for them and take them to these wild locations around the world. And also ran into this lady who was in some sort of a real estate firm, I believe. They were really cool people. So I chit-chatted with them a little bit and then got off at my stop. But, it's a neat experience. It's the train experience. You know, you never know who you're going to meet on the train, and there's always someone interesting to meet on the trains out there, you know. So honestly, folks, Matthew had a blast in his own way today going out to the Salt Flats. I had a blast today going out to my own place up in Ogden. But it was a really cool day. Like this makes moving to Utah well worthwhile because we get very little time off air, and when we do, we have to try and spend it wisely. And here, every time you spend your time off air, it's time well spent, really. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on into some more questions. But I hope that addresses what the Enforcer and Enforcer Matt were up to on our adventures through the world today out here in Utah. And if anything, folks, make sure to take a little trip out to Utah sometime around. It's a really cool place. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat is going to go to Ryan Courtney. And Ryan put in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Ryan, for that support once again. And we do appreciate that. And Enforcer, what about you?
And a big thanks to you once again for the support, Ryan, and helping this channel to keep on running. It's folks like you who make this thing a reality. So that way we can be on air every night and run this show. And so a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that quite well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Joseph Mann, who puts in a 50. And thank you very much, Joseph, for that $50 support. And he said, "We know reporters are biased, and you are too. Don't surrender our country or theirs."
And I thank you so much for the support. We stay as unbiased as we can. Now, as far as bias, we are definitely biased as far as being pro-American. I'll never compromise on that. Every time we say anything on air, it's always with the interest of the nation at heart. And I hope that people really do know that to their bottom dollar, that we are always saying things with the best interest of America in mind. But at the same time, as far as politics, I'll be entirely honest with y'all. I try and have as level-headed an opinion of people as possible until it's impossible not to. Being unbiased as far as our coverage on foreign policy and such things, that goes as far as we can take it. But when something happens like the 28-point peace deal today, and that is just absolutely stupid, and all of the other stupid things that have happened over the year that we've held our tongue on, it really gets hard to not say, at least as far as the objective foreign policy side of things, that it's going poorly. You know, that's like, you know, we don't hold bars on anything with that sort of stuff. And people never want to give you credit, especially the political people, because back in the day, before this guy became the president and was the last guy who was president, we would criticize his actions, and the hot dog man would sit there and say that we're what was it, Matthew? It was like MAGA Nazis or something like that, because we would sit there and criticize that president and his actions, and people would actually believe that because we criticized the last president's actions in foreign policy. And then it comes around that this guy's in charge, and we do the same thing to him. It's the same fair analysis on foreign policy. So if it's a bad call, it's a bad call. We're not going to sugarcoat it or glaze it. And then people want to sit there and attack us because they're way too political to understand that everyone can make wrong moves and wrong plays. And then they want to say, you know, whatever they want to say. But as far as it goes, though, I'll be honest with y'all, I do not give a damn what people have got to say. We've been doing this for so long that we've found that everyone will gripe, well, not everyone, but someone will have a gripe no matter what. If you sit there and you don't call out something that was goofy, people are going to slam you. If you say that something's goofy, they're going to slam you. So we just have to do what we have to do, and it is what it is at the end of the day. So, you know, like generally, honestly, I'll just be honest with y'all. As far as people's opinions on what they think about what we're saying or not, analysis-wise, I could give a damn what other people's opinions are. It's our analysis. It's like, if you don't like it, you can come up with your own analysis. But as far as telling me that you think my analysis sucks, I could give a damn. It's my analysis. It is what it is. So you can either take it or leave it. But with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again for support. And of course, we try and stay as unbiased as we can, but we will always have a bias in favor of the United States of America. So a big thanks to you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, I'm just curious here. I did go one place out here in Utah. I'm curious if anybody can identify where this place is, because it's not perfectly identifiable. Enforcer, show them the picture I just sent you, by the way. Let's see if anybody in the chat is really good at geolocation here. It's out, I won't say the area, but it's an area that some people may know where this is. The Enforcer's going to know where it is because he's been here with me. But let's see if anybody can identify what that is.
And we're going to wait to see. So we're going to give it a little bit. It's a very interesting area, very, very arid. Also, folks, you can see those Russian thistles littering the landscape in this area. Those are the ones I was telling you all about that didn't exist in the Wild West days. but they exist now because they were brought over in the 1870s, and then they started to proliferate to the point that we couldn't control them. And now they're here to this day, and they're a integral part of what the West looks like. But still, a pretty neat little place, and we're waiting to see what folks are going to say about where this is. So it's coming on in.
Why's everybody saying Area 51? That's not in Utah. That's in Nevada. And also, Area 51 doesn't have paved roads going up to it. It's usually just sandy, sort of like desert roads and things like that. Dugway has a paved road going up to it, but I'm not saying if this is Dugway or not.
And someone said the ranch. Get your mind out the gutter. What the hell? The ranch? Nah, this ain't nowhere near the ranch. The one with the bunnies. You know the one I'm talking about, right?
Oh, they have a ranch out here with the bunnies?
Not that kind, man. Not that kind. It's a brothel. It's not a good kind.
Oh man, it's like a breeding facility for the rabbits.
You could put it that way. Like you could say that, but it's not the kind. It's not the kind that respectable people wander around. You know, like just to put it that way. It doesn't look like anyone's actually getting this.
Okay, I know what you're talking about now. I just got it.
Yeah, there you go. It's in Nevada. It's not in Utah, so it's across the border. But anyways,
also, nobody did get this. I'm surprised by that. Nobody got this one. I'll just say it at this point because nobody's really getting it here. But this one here is Mercer, Utah. It's like an old gold mining town. This is the road like right at the beginning before you jump off the highway to get to it. It's closed. You can't go into it, but this is the road leading into it right here. Yeah, there it is, right there.
Yeah, this is the road to Mercer. Mercer is a famous ghost town here in Utah. You can actually see some of the mining pits left over from way back in the day when Mercer was an active city. And I'll actually show you all a little bit of Mercer. There's some really cool pictures of the town of Mercer. Here's one of them right here. That's actually what Mercer used to look like. Now none of these buildings exist. The only thing that exists in this area are the mining pits that they were digging out of. Like, for example, that mill that y'all see way up there, that is actually on this hill right here. That's at least where it once was. So this picture, if we're orienting ourselves or kind of like trying to geolocate where this picture was taken from, this picture was taken from across that valley on a hill on the other side. So that picture that we're looking at right here, it was taken from here on that dot, and it was looking towards that mill, which was right up there on that hill. So now you can orient yourself off of that picture of what the place kind of used to look like. The whole town was abandoned. That's what it started to look like to a degree. I don't really know a lot about the history of Mercer as a ghost town, but it is quite an interesting ghost town. They are actually going to be restarting gold mining in this area, which is very interesting. But the reason why you can't really go up there often these days is because there's a lot of toxic chemicals in the ground, like arsenic and cyanide and others, because a lot of that was used in the process to extract the gold from this area. It was a gold mine back then, and it's going to turn into a gold mine again nowadays. So really interesting sort of a place. But the farthest up you can go is this gate. Actually, it's further down than that. Where in the world is it? Oh, it's right here. Oh, so the pits are just right around the corner. That's crazy. But you can go all the way up here to this gate, and that's as far as you can go. You can't go past that.
Yeah, can't go past it at all. There was a vehicle parked up there. I'm not sure if it was the guard for the guard shack or if it was somebody maybe, possibly going around the gate. But there was a vehicle parked up there when we drove up the road, so I'm not sure what they were doing.
Yeah, I don't know what they were doing either, but it's a very interesting place, this town of Mercer. And also, let's see what its demise was, because it looks like in the one picture that it was a massive fire. Let's see. Soon there were enough people to build a new town on the old site. The Citizens Colonized Branch Railroad was built in a large cyanide mill. It's kind of crazy that we just had cyanide mills. Cyanide could kill you pretty quickly, and we just had mills where we're like, yeah, we're extracting gold using cyanide. It's like, wow, that's great. I mean, we're literally using like pretty much ricin to extract the gold. That's pretty well. But let's see. He sold his greed amongst the miners. Let's see here. Well, hell, where in the world is the town's collapse? Oh, okay, so here it is. In 1902, a fire that started in the business district in the town burned almost the entire city to the ground. The town was rebuilt and mining resumed again. And then the ward was discontinued in 1913 because the mines had closed and the majority of the population had moved away. By 1916, there was only one building left in Mercer, and by 1930, it was gone. So, much like any other ghost town, a lot of ghost towns actually out in the West Coast, folks, are really cool because a lot of them were actually silver mining towns. Very rarely were they gold mining towns like Mercer. A lot of them were trying to mine silver because back in the day when the US dollar was backed by silver and gold, or one or the other, silver mining was a big thing. And I forgot the actual act of Congress, but during the latter part of the 1800s, a lot of businessmen would invest in these silver mining towns off in the middle of nowhere in places like Montana and Colorado and Utah to go out there and mine the silver because the government would pay them top dollar for every pound of silver that they were able to get out of the hills. But once that act was repealed and the government stopped ensuring that they would buy all silver that was mined, a lot of these ghost towns completely collapsed overnight. Some of them still exist, actually. Some of the structures, at least, are still standing in some of these ghost towns. And I would have to say, huge recommendation to a YouTube channel called Part-Time Explorer. He is a great channel and does really cool deep dives into a whole bunch of ghost towns throughout the whole of the United States. And he actually shows some of them that still have standing structures. And he goes into deep history that is wildly interesting about the history of the town, the people who lived there, what they did, and the demise of the towns that eventually turned them into what they are today.
Oh, and you also know something else fascinating, real quick, while we're still on the topic. This is a real fast one here. There's also Boeing. Boeing is out here right next to Copperton. If you go see where Copperton's at, it's kind of like beyond Kennecott a little bit. It's like a little town like right below Kennecott mine right there.
Let's take a look. Here we are.
Yeah, Boeing is like around here somewhere. I think it's down the street a little bit toward the city. If you scroll toward the city there.
Right out here. Oh, here it is, right there.
Yeah, it's Boeing right there. I'm not sure what they do at that facility. I think it may be assembly or something. I'm not really sure. But let's see. Boeing West
Parts
Jordan.
manufacturing facility, most likely.
Oh, okay. It's a fabricator or something. But Northrop also has a facility up near Magna. I drove past that one on the way back. I was like, oh, look, there's Northrop up there. We've seen that on the map before. But yeah, there's a whole Northrop facility right there. I think they're doing testing at that facility.
Yeah, I think they are. And there's a whole bunch of cool stuff around here, folks. We'll have to try and wander around and find it. And there's also a steel mill right here in this area, which is also nuts. Like a steel mill in the middle of the plain in the valley, basically in Salt Lake City. Really cool. And also, TS Actual said, so is Utah a mining state? Yeah, it kind of is. I mean, Utah has the largest open pit mine in the world here, which is Bingham Mine, which mines primarily copper, but basically any ore that they could find, they will process it. So that's the biggest open pit mine on the planet right now. There's not a bigger one anywhere in the world. So Utah kind of is still a mining state, really big one at that, especially for copper ore. And there's also some other big industries here as well. But mining, I think, is one of their largest industries for the state. I'll have to look into their industrial breakdown, though, and see what really is the biggest industry for the state of Utah, because I think mining is one of the biggest money producers. But
the smelter's up there right off of Interstate 80, right up there near the Salt Lake. It's like the Rio Tinto smelter for the copper.
Let's see, Rio Tinto. How far out was it?
It was like right there in that area you were looking at, sort of around this spot. Zoom in, go to the left.
Oh, here it is.
Yeah, right there.
Ah, the smelters. What are they? Interesting. Very interesting. Let's see. Where do they put the finished product once they get done? I don't know. But that's very interesting.
They had trains going in and out of this thing like nonstop. Like they were going up some pretty decent grades too. They had like these little smaller trains, like hauling like 10 or 11 train cars behind them. And they were chuffing like smoke out the top of those things. They were pushing them.
I would bet you, man, that they looked like this, didn't they?
Oh, no. They were like SD40s. Is that what you call them?
SD40s? Man, those are like kind of big. I was thinking you were like talking. Were they Union Pacifics or were they like the companies?
They were like some independent, like third party thing. What that blue one right there looks like it. Click on that.
That's Montana Rail Link.
It was blue like that, and it looked similar to that train.
Oh, there's one right there. I wonder if we can see that from a street view. We can't get into the facility. Maybe we can see that from the highway out here. Let's see here. Let's take a little look around and see if we... Holy smokes. Oh, I thought that was the grade for the rail. Oh my god, it's going up the mountain. I was like, that is, like, steep. We can't see him from here. But I'm sure some rail fans out there have documentation of them, like a picture of them somewhere. I'm gonna pull this up because now you got me really interested. The Kennecott smelter trains. Let's see here. Kennecott smelter trains. I'm sure we will find a picture here somewhere. Oh my goodness, they had an Alco. That is so cool. Like, that is the neatest thing ever.
It was like a blue train that said something like GT Express or something like that on the side of it. It was like it looked like, yeah, it was this. Yeah, that right there.
That one. Yeah, it's that one. So it's a GTMX. Let's see. Road name GTMX. Grand Trunk? No way.
I was like Grand Turk. I was like, huh?
I don't know. I don't know who in the world would own this actually, because I can't find like the railroad. Let's see. Let me put in railroad. Maybe that'll help Google out railroad. Huh. Oh, wait a minute. So GMTX is apparently the Mexican version of GATX. So it might actually be a Mexican leaser.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
It was
stuff.
something like that though, like the way you see that smoke coming out of it. It was doing that in real life, and it was loud too. Like they had that thing ramped up.
Man, they had that thing on notch 8, man. They were like flooring it basically. But man, that is so cool. A little industrial railroad right by the interstate. Like, that is actually really neat. But anyways, folks, with that, it is time for us to get on to the next one. Because Matthew told me a minute or two ago that we had 35 super chats left, and we're still sitting here just shooting the breeze at this point. So we got to make sure to get to all the super chats so we can get to the live chats. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Brian Sador. And thank you very much, Brian, for that $50 support right there. And we do appreciate that very, very much. And he said, let's see here. Oh man, Brian, I would read your super chat, but that company right there scares me because I think they've done some things in the past with the whole like making statements about their company type deal. So I'm a little bit paranoid about talking about their company a little bit because they seem to be very vigilant about people talking about their company. So I think I will have to paraphrase it. He says he thinks that maybe Maduro offered to walk away, but he thinks there's something else going on, potentially with another thing involving a voting system.
Well, Matthew might be scared to say the name, but I'm going to say it. No, I'm just kidding. But beyond that, I would have to say, generally, maybe. Like, we can't get too much into that, though, because those people might be kind of a little litigious. So I do thank you so much for the support and help with this channel to keep it running, and I hope we were able to address that the best we can. And we do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I got to say, folks, 24 minutes into this vote, I'm very disappointed. Why in the world would no one want to go with me to the 7 museums? You got guns, cars, and trains all in one go. Like, all in one go. And y'all would rather go to a flat, salty area than 3 museums in one?
I just saw it. The poll says, which destination would you have chosen? And also, by the way, it was about the destination. And 58% said Bonneville Salt Flats with Matt. 42% said Ogden Train Museums with Andrew.
You should have put the Ogden Museums instead of trains, man, because there was like so much more than trains.
Man, honestly, but I think the people are looking for a bit of an adrenaline rush. I think that's what they're looking for, and they want to go see those Bonneville Salt Flats. Honestly, though, I got to say, like, just from a neutral standpoint, not being biased here, and also not trying to let my car guy, like, nature and hobby sort of play into it, but this is like, if you're ever in the area, you got to go see the salt flats. Like that is actually something worth seeing. Like that's not something that you show up to like Stonehenge or something like that, and you're like, Stonehenge, like it kind of was disappointing a little bit. The salt flats are genuinely impressive. Like you can stand out there for a solid hour and you still don't comprehend what you're looking at. It's like your brain stops working and you don't really fully understand what it's really looking like until you leave and look at pictures of it. And then you're like, I might need to go back a second time to fully understand what I saw. It was fascinating. But Enforcer, what say you?
In the words of Greta, how dare you? How dare y'all pick going to the salt flats over that many museums? Who in the world would have a problem with seeing antique cars or super cool guns by the best gun designer in the world, or trains? Who in the world could say no to one of those three? I mean, like, even if you don't like trains, you gotta like cars and guns, right? I mean, like, that's like a great combo right there. It's a great trio with all three, you know? Like, salt flats? Really? Oh, this world is doomed. You know what? This country is cooked. Like, it's over. It's over, everyone. There's just no way to recover from this. I mean, the people would rather go see some flat, salty land than go to some cool museums. I mean, hell, folks. I think we ought to just call it quits right here. I'm just kidding, folks, by the way. I mean, I get it. So the Bonneville Salt Flats look sick. Honestly, I'm going to go out there at some point. Probably go out there with Matthew. But, you know, I would say, though, that as far as the trip today, I had a blast today. Like, it was a really fun time. Andy had a fun time in his own way. But I'm sticking with my guns, folks. The museums in Ogden were sick. I mean, it was super cool. And also, by the way, folks, you know what's crazy, folks, is that you don't really have to pick one or the other because you can get to all of them eventually if you live here. You can go to the salt flats, you can go to the museums, you can go to the mountains, you can go to the deserts. Like I haven't really looked at what's south of Provo, but here's what south of Provo looks like. Like the desert. Whoa, it looks cool. It's really cool. So you can.
You know what Provo is short for?
What?
Provolone, because they got that cheese.
Oh, they get that cheese like they're from Vermont. Oh.
Oh.
Man, or you could be like that condescending Spanish voice on the front runner train. You are now arriving at American Fork, and that's because they had a fork and it was made in America. Oh. But oh man, I tell you, oh man. Also, they call this place Alpine because it's like being in the Alps. That's like actually why they called it that. So I'm not even kidding. That's the reason why they named it that. You know, it's kind of cool, really. But you know, that's just me. You know, I might be wrong. And there's also this place, Matthew. Where in the hell was that place where they like glided off the side of the hill?
They were paragliding, but they were paragliding. They weren't going off the side of a cliff. They were paragliding out here. It was right there. It was your mouse is right next to it. It's like go front ways
right
a little
here.
bit. Yeah, there you go.
Man, I almost turned into that guy who was at those city council meetings going, well, go ahead. Then with that one time he said, I think she ought to go up to the top of the city council building and do a triple flip, you know, and it's like, what the hell? It's like, this guy's crazy. Man, I almost made it sound like that. But people like paraglide and stuff off the side of this hill. It's so cool to watch him. Like, really
Mad
neat.
lads. Absolutely mad lads.
Honestly, I don't think they're mad. I think they're dreamers, folks. And I think that they're wanting to soar like the birds. Really cool stuff. A lot of respect for them. Looks like a really cool little hobby. Dangerous, though, because if you mess up, you could break your neck pretty easy. But still, how cool is that? And they have a whole park for it. So you can just drive up here to this thing and go and do this.
I think that's how that guy, that fellow that did the King of Random channel. You remember Grant? I can't remember his last
Grant
name.
Thompson.
Yeah, Grant Thompson. He did the random channel. I think he actually died in a paragliding accident. That's how he passed away. Actually, was by doing this. Pull that up to make sure, though, before I say that for a fact.
Let's see. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a paragliding accident. That's how he passed away. Actually, which was it was here
In Hurricane?
No
He died
way.
here?
I didn't even know he lived in Utah. I didn't know he lived here. I was down in Huracan, actually. That's down near St. George. I didn't know he did that. He lost his life paragliding. It was horrible.
So where in the world is there a little paragliding spot down here?
I'm not really sure.
Well, I mean, that's a great point to point out that sport can be dangerous because that guy died doing that very hobby. I mean, not that should stop anyone. I mean, it still looks really cool. It's just that, you know, if you mess up, you could get killed, you know, like he did. But still, that is wild, dude. I never knew that happened in Utah. I thought that was like in California or something.
Yeah, that's wild right there. That guy was way too young, like 38 years old. That is way too young to go out. That was a very tragic thing.
And he was a cool dude. I loved his channel. I thought his channel was the greatest. Like I would like Matthew Me would like watch that guy's videos religiously when he put them out because they were always just so well produced and so interesting. He present the stuff greatly. It was a shame that the guy died like that in a paragliding accident because if he was still around today, I think he'd have one of the largest science channels on YouTube by far. He was really good at what he did. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that, unfortunately, the best we can about that whole deal. But once again, still outside of that unfortunate fact, endless stuff to do here, literally something for everyone. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to OCIO Monitor, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, OCIO Monitor, for that support. They said, welcome to Utah. I've been here for 7 years, and I suggest forgetting the humidifier and just accepting you'll have a bloody nose for 6 months until your sinuses toughen up. And I didn't know that the Salt Lake City enforcers weren't going to be coming out and bloodying my nose like that. I didn't know they were operating like that right there. But I guess you gotta pay your fair share, I guess they say. But honestly though, I'm not really sure if a humidifier will work, but I might have to give it a try and see. I will say I haven't had those issues though, at all. It's just mainly just like a dusty sense or something like that, like feeling dusty or something. But enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I actually haven't had any issues out here from the low humidity and the change in altitude. I had an altitude sickness when we first got here pretty decently. I got over it over a couple of days, but I've never had any issues talking. Like I don't really cough at all, and I also haven't gotten any bloody noses either, interestingly enough, from the low humidity. So I think, I'll be honest with y'all folks, talking the way I talk on air for the amount of time I do, and then also all the extra amount of time that I talk off air, which is basically nonstop. If I'm awake, I'm probably talking to someone or something. So I think I just like toughened up my sinuses and everything else way before we ever got here to the point that it's ironclad because I've had no effects from it at all, rather than the altitude sickness for just a little short amount of time. So with that, I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we will become Utah tough soon. And another place that I want to go, folks, not to continue to just filibuster here, because Matthew did tell me that we got to speed up a lot, and I do agree, but there was something interesting, Matthew. Just 20 seconds, man, just 20 seconds. I want to go to Moab, Utah, because it's in the middle of these red rocks in this really cool place. I mean, look at that. Who the hell wouldn't want to go there? I mean, that looks like it's out of the movie Cars. I want to go here eventually, but it's kind of far away, so I don't know if I ever will be able to, but I mean, look at that. That is cool as hell. So we'll see. We'll see one day about going there, but that's like a vacation sort of a deal, so not really easy to pull off. But with that, I hope we addressed that well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to John Garner. And it's good to see you once again, John. And he put in a $20 support. And we do appreciate that very much. And also, welcome back. And he said, I missed you.
Hey, we missed you. We missed you. Welcome back here. Welcome back. Have a seat. Make yourself comfortable. Make yourself at home. We always miss our folks when they're away, and we're happy to have you back, man. I gotta say, a wonderful thing that you're back here, and I gotta thank you for the incredible support and helping this channel to keep on rolling once you returned. It's great to see you here. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again. And we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Chronic Barbarian, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Chronic Barbarian, for that support. They said, I just watched Intercepted, what Russian soldiers think about the war, produced by a DW documentary here on YouTube. It was sad, but well documented.
Interesting. I'll have to take a look into that. I personally haven't seen that myself, because once we get done with the work here on the show, I try and watch as little of other people's content in this category as possible. Not because of any disrespect to them or anything. A lot of them make great content, but at the same time, I always want to make sure that one, I take a break from this so I don't get burned out on it. And two, I also don't want our opinions and analysis here on the channel to be tainted because everyone's hardwired to mentally take the shortest path to an answer. So if you heard an answer from someone else earlier in the day on the topic we talk about, we'll most likely parrot it because that's mentally how everyone's hardwired. So that's also another reason we don't watch stuff like that a lot. But that sounds really interesting though, and I probably will have to try and give that a watch sometime around here soon. But a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Brian Sodor once again, and he puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Brian, for the second support of the night. And he said, Slava Ukraine.
And Slava Ukraine, Uram Slava. And the big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it rolling. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Brian Soder once again, and it's Soder actually just said in the live chat, and he put in another 20. And thank you very much, Brian, for the third support. He said, "I keep thinking the USA is trying to preserve Russia because we're afraid they will be too weak to keep China out of eastern Russia, and there's something else going on here."
It's possible. It's possible. I think that we're more so scared of the Russians conducting a nuclear strike at this point than anything, but that may also be a possibility as well. You never know. You never know. But still, a big thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, I got to say really quickly to the viewer, LG Gitis, actually, a channel legend and an oligarch, by the way, who said that we need to go to the Hill Air Force Base Museum. I didn't know that this was even here. We're going to go to it now. Thank you for sharing that with us. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 20 from Michael Tripto, and Michael puts in a 20. Also, there's the trainer SR-71 right there. The I forgot what was that, the YF something, I think they called it.
Yeah, I think it's like the I forgot the actual designation of it, but we could go to this museum and find out.
Yeah, that's the trainer one, though. That's a rare model right there. But jumping into the super chat we had here from Michael Tripto, he put in a 20 and said, oh, man, I can't say it, Michael. Otherwise, someone's going to clip it. Someone's going to clip it, and then they're going to say Matt said something like that. So I can't read it. But he said, long live Ukraine. And he said, USA.
Hey, and USA, and long live Ukraine, Slava Ukraini. And a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running, because folks like you make this thing possible and help us to keep the dream alive. Don't let the flame die out! But still, a huge thanks to you so much once again. And, oh my god, they got a Vietnamese MiG-21. And a nuke.
Oh, wow. Oh,
wow, man, we gotta go here. They got a nuke. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to BSG Wolf, and BSG puts in a 20, and thank you very much, good sir, as well for that support. And BSG said, the plan is a fool's plan. Have a nitric acid Coke Zero on me.
Hey, thank you so much for support. I agree, it's a fool's plan. And we will have a nitric acid Coke on you. A huge thanks to you. And also, by the way, you have been around for a while. I remember that happened in, like, it was like August of 2022 when we made that joke. You've been here for a long time, man. I got to thank you so much for supporting, being an old guard, and reminding me of a joke that was made, I think, like 3.5 years ago at this point. That's really crazy that you've been here this long. We've been doing it that long, too. But a huge thanks to you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Drops Trades LLC, who puts in a 20 as well. And thank you very much, Drop Trades, for that support. He said, I'm not political. I follow politics because it affects the market. And I trade stocks. And a moron won't sign that peace agreement.
And I would have to say, I thank you for the support. And I would say a moron certainly would sign that peace agreement. And that's a pretty silly peace agreement right there. I'd agree with you. So a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping the channel to keep it running. And also, that is kind of smart to pay attention to politics on trading stocks, because every time the president said 200% on China, the whole stock market would plummet immediately. So you had to be kind of a little quick on your toes to make sure that you caught that before it happened, you know. So with that, a big thanks to you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to Gerald Everett, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Gerald. He said, Venezuela is a move to give the U.S. plausible deniability not to fulfill our obligations to go to war on Taiwan or NATO's behalf.
It's possible. It's not out of the question. It's not impossible. I would hope that that's not the case. But a huge thanks to you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep rolling. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to USS Toledo SSN 769, who puts in a 10 and does not leave a comment, though. But thank you very much, USS Toledo, for that support. And we also have a 10 from Dave. And Dave said, could A-10s be placed in the EU to burr the drone incursions away?
Possibly, but the backstop is a bit of the issue because of the 30 mil shells will drop eventually, and then civilian collateral's a high likelihood at that point, especially if they're explosive filler shells. And I don't think that there's any proxy fused 30 millimeter shells for the A-10 SCOW that could be used or configured properly when fired from the GAU. So you would still have a big chance of the backstop being a house filled with a family, and they could get slammed by a 30 mil. So probably not the best idea, in my opinion. I think there's probably more effective ways to deal with, like ground-based air defense fire. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep rolling. And we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Smarzig, who puts in a 10. They said, whatever happened to the beloved minerals deal?
I guess that just got thrown out the window. So the Ukrainians signed it; they have to give over half of the minerals, but we didn't fulfill any part of our end of the bargain at this point at all. So with that, I hope that does address that the best we can. A big thanks to you once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Robert Betancourt, and thank you very much, Robert, for that $10 support right there. Sadly, I can't read the comment, though, as it does get into something that we can't talk about on the channel, but thank you very much, Robert, for that $10 support. And he also threw in a second one, by the way, and he said Russia did train with Tabun, which is every fifth round of 155mm shell.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Thank you for the support and sharing that with us. It is very knowledgeable to know. And so a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Detroit Adam. And Adam said, when did Russia stop being the evil empire and the head of the USSR and Cold War enemy and all that? And all that means to the U.S. political system. And when did those people say Russia changed? Why? And LSA, and great show, guys.
I gotta be honest with you, I don't even know. Because it kind of changes from place to place. I remember back in the day. Oh, it's hard, folks, not to make something sound like it's political, but I gotta bring this up because it's not political, but it is something a little important to remind people of. Remember when the current president of the United States, when he was in his last term, around 2018, chastised the Germans when Angela Merkel was still the leader of Germany, chastised them for the Nord Stream pipeline because such a strong economic connection with the Russians was a bad idea? Y'all remember that? That's a little odd because, back then Russia was still our enemy, and even the current president understood that back then and acted on that and made statements following along with that idea. And then for some reason, just in the midst of that term and this one, something changed. Don't know what it is, but now apparently we shouldn't be cutting economic connections with the Russians like we were telling the Germans to and everyone else to back before the war in Ukraine, the invasion of Ukraine had even happened at that point. Now we're telling everyone, as a matter of fact, Ukraine ought to unconditionally surrender, and we ought to have as many economic connections with Russia that we can, even if they don't even make any sense. Like, that's the kind of stuff that doesn't really click with me, and that's not even getting political, folks. That's just, how the hell can you say one thing in one term and then in your second term say a totally different thing? Like, one of them is true and one of them's wrong. Like, one of them's the wrong approach and one of them's the right approach. So, if you like die hard support the guy, which one was the right approach? And it obviously isn't the one he's currently doing, because that doesn't make any sense. It's the one he was doing in the last term, and the one everyone else was doing before that too, before this term. The last president, the guy before him, and the guy all before those guys. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to the consul, who puts in a 10, who said, hello, enforcers, and I couldn't help but notice Crosspatch's comment at the top of the peace deal post. Is what he said in that comment true? And no way this can be the actual peace deal, and LSA.
No, it was not true what he said. Like, that's why Zelensky's going to go and talk to the president about this peace plan, is because it's got his blessing on it. That guy, the political stooge just run interference for their people whenever anything happens. Like, like back during the whole other time that we've been covering news where the current guy wasn't the president and it was the last guy, all of the people who supported the last president, they run interference. So if something looked too stupid to be unbelievable, they'd run interference. No, that's not really him, that's someone else, and he wasn't involved, and he was on the moon, or he was in the middle of the sun or something, and he was taking a nap, or he couldn't be involved. They all run interference like that. So that guy was speaking BS in that comment section about the peace plan. That was approved by the president, and that is the standing peace plan at the moment. So I hope that does address that the best we can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also a big shout out to Levi Stratton for putting in a $10 support. And thank you very much, Levi, for that $10 support. And then we also had a 10 from Crispy. And Crispy did not leave a comment either. But thank you both Crispy and Levi for, once again, helping to keep the channel on the air. And we also have a 10 from Bennett Martinez. And Bennett said, enforcers, do you think it's real? Do you think it's real? I think he meant to say Israel. Yeah, he did. Do you think that Israel was a part of making the 28 poop plops plan? The U.S. went and took the one milk dud total peace with land return and reparations and did 28 in LSA in America.
I would doubt that they're involved. The Israelis don't really get involved in anything that doesn't concern them. They're very self-focused. to a fault, really. So I don't think they were involved in this. They're currently right now they're involved in dictating terms to the U.S. about how we can sell our own F-35s to Saudi Arabia. So they're kind of tied up with that whole side of things at this point. And I just gotta say, folks, like in the defense, of the president selling F-35s to Saudi Arabia, because some people say if they're sold to Saudi Arabia, the secrets are going to get leaked to China. We already sold the F-15EX to Saudi Arabia, and several of them. That is as advanced computer-wise from what we know in the public as an F-35 Lightning. The internal computers, radars, and components of an F-15EX is about that advanced. So if we sold the F-15EX to Saudi Arabia and trusted them with that, why in the hell wouldn't we trust them with an F-35? Just to be honest with y'all, I think the Israelis are making a big issue out of it. Just to make a big issue out of it, basically like they're running the show in the Middle East. And I've just got to be honest with y'all. Being as pro-American as I am, we're running the show, not Israel in the Middle East. So they can take a step back. If we want to sell an F-35 to the Saudis, we will. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Erland, who puts in a 5. He said the most catastrophic outcome of the war would be the lifting of Russian sanctions.
I would agree. I don't think that's going to turn out well for us in the future. We're basically allowing them to recharge for the next phase of the war. That's not a good idea. Like, if they're openly aggressive against the West right now, which they made it very clear that they are, why in the world will we give them a chance to economically recharge their wallets so that way they can go at this again? That's a bad idea. Anyone who thinks otherwise, they don't really know a lot about how this whole deal is working out here. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to 90% Junk Silver, who puts in a 5 and said NATO needs to grow a set.
I agree. It's getting so tiresome. I would definitely agree with you. They need to grow a set. A huge thanks to you for the support. And we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to William Siegel, who puts in a 5. He said, here's to enjoying your coffee and Costco chicken.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support for the Costco coffee and the chicken. We love the chicken. Sadly, I actually didn't get the chicken on my last Costco run. I completely forgot the thing. But I love Costco chicken. And the next time I go to Costco, you bet your bottom dollar, I'm getting a Costco chicken for $5. It's a steal, and the chicken is so good. I mean, who in the world could ever refuse? So a huge thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep rolling. And we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Robert Ridgway. And Robert said, not surprised, it's a business deal that puts money right back into the pockets of Washington.
Yeah, I got to be honest with y'all. This whole like mafia style scamming and swindling trick that we do in foreign policy these days, where it's like, we screwed everyone over, but America made $5. It's like, that is so stupid. Like, and I see some people also saying that about the other trade stuff. Like, for example, the thing with Argentina. It's like, no, we gave them like 40 billion basically, but we made like 5 million off of it, so it works out in the end. It's like, how in the world does that kind of economics work? Like, if we ran businesses like that, they'd go bankrupt. It's like, that doesn't make any sense at all. And what's so stupid about it is that in foreign policy nowadays, the approach is that they can throw $1 trillion at something, and if it returns $1 million from that investment, they say that anyone who's criticizing the action is a stupid idiot because it's returning $1 or something, and therefore it was a good investment because some money was returned. Like if some guy told you on the street, give me $1,000 and I'll make sure to get you some money back for that, you'll make money off of it, and you gave him $1,000 and he gave you back $5, you'd say you got ripped off. Like, and for some reason people aren't thinking that way when it comes to the whole foreign policy side of things with this. But anyways, a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep rolling. And also, Matthew, man, hey yo, what the hell?
You said some guy. You mean some young guy?
Oh no, that's it. No Diddy. With that, we're on to the next one.
That's their favorite dish, and that's Putin's favorite dish. It's that dish it's a specialty in the cuisine called samyangait.
Man, you were about to say the whole thing. You were stuttering so hard not to say it, man. You're like, man. But with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Drop Trades LLC, who puts in a 10. And Drop Trade said, if you want to know what the credit swap is about, then maybe I can be a guest in the future to explain it.
Thank you for the support, and maybe possibly. We usually don't have guests because it's really hard to fit one into this format. Because usually, basically, the format is me steamrolling my way through a monologue, and then Matthew is trying to get in a word edgewise at some point, but I'm steamrolling so hard on the monologue, it's really hard to be able to even get a word in. So it's really hard to have guests because of the format and also the style. So we'll see, but from what I understand, I just don't really like the credit swap deal from what I'm understanding. But still, a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Measureman168, who puts in a 5. He said, I guess we know Putin does have that photo. Oh, boy.
Oh, boy. And then the question is whether it's a man or animal. Is it man or beast? It's like that is also the other question. And that one hasn't been answered.
Some young guy. Oh, dear.
Man, I got to be honest with you, man. The alternative from some young guy, it's not a good alternative. Honestly, the alternative is even worse. So it's like, oh god, man. I got to be honest with you. A lot of people have been talking about, wow, what a beautiful stallion. It's just like, but anyway, so that we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Tara High, who puts in a 5 and said Putin can't stop it that fast, even if he wanted to. The Russian economy is a war economy, and if it just stopped, it would collapse what's left overnight.
And that's possibly right. I mean, it could end up badly for him. That's probably why they want to keep the war going on the way it's going on. But a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to none other than Robert Krogan, who puts in a 5. He said, upset that I missed so much of the show.
Ah, man. Better late than never. That's what we always say, though. And I got to thank you for being here. Late, but still great to have you here. And I got to thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on rolling. And so with that, I hope that has addressed that well. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to JB Jake, who puts in a 5. And JB said, if Venezuela strikes start, do you think we will get much or any footage? And what do you think the first targets are likely to be? And thank you.
Yes, we will get footage. It'll be from the ground in Venezuela. The U.S. won't publish any footage at all, and they might even try and stop the footage from Venezuela from getting out as much as they can. But the first targets that'll be struck will be air defense related. So, air bases, air defense batteries, such things like that. Those will be the first targets to be hit. So I hope that does address that the best that we can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Andrew Honeycutt, who puts in a 5. He said, on gang, what up with it, skibbity? Foreign policy letting up slide on the U.S. then getting glazed. LLT, LSA, and Slava Ukrainian hero Slava.
Man, they whipping up on our block and messing that shit up, man, on God, man. Honestly, man, got me tripping, man. But still, a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I got to be honest, I agree with you completely. We can speak your dialect, and I completely agree with you. And so, a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a $2 support from Dusty. And that's how I feel every day right now, until I get a humidifier. But thank you very much, Dusty, for that $2 support. He said, Matt, did you go to the one gas station out there in the flats? And I did not. I didn't. I do know the gas station you're talking about, though. There's one Sinclair gas station out there, like out in the middle of nowhere. And it looked like that gas station that guy off of No Country for Old Men, the guy with the bowl cut, stopped at and then had to talk with the guy at the gas station. It looked like that. Yeah. Wait, what?
Man, he said something about something or something, call it. And then the other guy had to say something in response.
Oh, yeah. He's like, call the coin toss.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, it was that guy that was like psycho and stuff like that running around. Honestly, kind of an interesting movie, but it looked like that. It was a Sinclair station out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, there it is right there. I think that is the only one out there that I could see. It's just like a little dino on it and everything. I like that dinosaur, by the way. I like that Sinclair thing. It's like out of the old movies you used to see and stuff like that. Also, apparently they have a abyss next to it. I didn't notice that when I drove past it. It's just an abyss over there.
Dude, they have a tar pit for the souls of the damned right next to the gas station.
That must be the dinos that used to live. That's why they put the gas station right next to it.
Man, isn't that pit that pterodactyl fell in Johnny Quest, and that guy went, Turu! And then the pterodactyl went, it's like dying in the oil pit. Isn't that it?
And then it said, oh, what a shame that old bastard fell in the oil pit.
Man, sad thing he died anyways. And then they just kept going on with the episode. And look, they always have that big plastic dinosaur out there. I appreciate it, though. They are dedicated to that dinosaur.
Man, I like it. And then they had Stinker, You remember that? They had like the little store and it was called Stinker next to the Sinclair place.
Oh, I remember that. That was
Yeah, a little
out.
stinker.
Where the hell was that? That was out near Sinclair, right here, actually. Yeah, it's this. It's there. It is, Stinkers, and that place stunk like shit. Like like I'm not even kidding. It reeked in there of shit. It was. It lived up to the Stinker name. Like, do you remember
Yeah,
that, Matthew?
literally stinker. And it has a skunk on it. Like that's their logo is a skunk, like it dressed up in a suit or something. Or no, dressed up in a boxing gloves.
Man, I actually heard that this skunk actually has like a video out for an advertisement, and he was like, "Your pump's not working. Fix your shit, wherever." They started throwing
I don't
some mean
understand how
hooks.
I don't understand how Stinker fits into the whole brand. I'm not really sure how it fits in. And also, Pete's Eats. He's got a bib on that sign down there. They took the skunk and they put him on the bottom. It looks real goofy on the Pete's Eats one though. Like he went stupid on that one.
Man, I'm not gonna lie, man. I remember this place, folks. We walked in and it kind of looked okay, but Matthew was like, "Man, I got to go to the restroom." I was like, "Man, I got to too." And so we both went in there, and it reeked. It was so bad smelling. It smelled like raw sewage in there, like near to the bathroom.
I wasn't like that.
It was pretty bad, man. Like I was about to gag actually. Like I don't know about you,
Ugh.
but we had to bounce. So we were like, "Get out of here, man! Don't get anything." So we drove all the way, I think, down the Green River after that. No, we drove down to Rollins actually. We bounced out of there, drove down to Rollins to this TA. And the winds were so strong that it like the door. I opened up the door on the van and it almost slammed back on me and like pinned my foot. But I got out and we got out and wandered around and got some snacks and stuff and gas and then we left. But oh man, stinker man, y'all, that was something right there, right outside the Sinclair refinery, in the company town, mind you all. I don't know if it's a company town still, but I know that when it was founded, I think it was a company town. So, anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Plazoth, who puts in a 3. And thank you very much, Plazoth, as well for that support, as always. And we do appreciate that. And we also have a 2 from LSA Sergeant Figment. And Sarge said, LSA hit that like button. That's an order.
Hey, nothing like LSA Sergeant Figment telling folks to hit the like button. And we have gotten almost 4,000 likes tonight. That is a lot of likes. And I got to say, a big thanks to you, LSA Sergeant Figment, for plugging that like button, because I'm sure you sent a couple of people its way. So huge thanks to you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to none other than 123 Cool Boy, who puts in a 2. He said, suggestion for Ukraine. Don't trust the word of the U.S.
These days, that's not far from the truth at all. So a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Dachi Bear, who puts in a 2. And he said, criticism comes from perceived support for the war.
Wayne, what do they mean by that? What do they mean by that?
What do you mean by that?
What? Is that a threat? I'm just kidding. But let's see.
Come on, man. I mean, what do you mean by that? I mean, come on. Honestly, I think, let me read it again. Criticism comes from perceived support for war. I think they were trying to say, unless I'm reading too deep into this, I think they were trying to say that us criticizing the 28-point peace plan is because we support the war continuing, I think. I think that's what they meant.
If that's what they meant, I mean, yeah, I would support continuing the war rather than giving up and surrendering. Like, you know, if that's what you were trying to say in the super chat, and I'm that's what I was getting from it as well. I just wanted to check with Matthew before I continued. If you're saying that surrendering is better than continuing fighting when the terms are that damn raw, then basically what you're saying is that you would have liked to have been in a German concentration camp because we would have unconditionally surrendered to the Germans in the Second World War, because it would have been better to give up than to fight and see more people die to fight for what was right. So, you know, that's kind of the alternative of what you're supporting there. I mean, that's not even straw manning. That's what it would have turned out to be in another historical period with that kind of mindset. So, you know, not really the greatest mindset to have if we're reading that correctly. So anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Bennett Martinez, who puts in a 2. He said, Iran's turning into that Rango town with the lizard. Yeah, I guess so. It kind of actually does fit. They don't have any cactus to drink, though. They don't have any of that. So they're going to be dried out, pretty much. But Enforcer, what say you?
Hello, beans. Man, do you remember that scene, man, where they like started insulting each other and then that kid like poked the lizard and said, hi, and then the lizard pulled out his gun and put it right in the kid's face? Do you remember that?
Damn, I don't remember that one.
Dude, it's like a well used meme at this point. Like, let me go pull it up so that way people don't think I'm crazy about this Rango gun meme.
Are you sure we can show that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's from like a PG movie. I mean, it couldn't be too bad. Like, it's this clip right here, like right there. It's a meme.
Damn, I hadn't seen this meme.
Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, man, the Rango movie was actually pretty good. Like, I like looking back at it, it was actually a damn good movie.
Wasn't that Amber Heard that voiced the lizard?
I know Johnny Depp did the lizard.
I was joking, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I said
I don't know.
Didn't Amber Heard do the lizard? Well, it was a dude, so I mean, it wasn't her.
Hold up, we got to check now. No, not AI mode. What the hell's that?
Alfred
Dude,
Molina.
Dr. Ock.
Bro, isn't that Doc Ock?
Bro, Doc Ock was in this movie?
Damn, I didn't know that. Who was he playing?
Roadkill. Yeah.
Who the hell was Roadkill?
I think it was that armadillo that got flattened at the beginning of the movie. You remember that one?
Wow, why'd they give him such a lame part?
I don't know. I want to check if Amber Heard was actually in this, though. Johnny Depp was in there as Rango. And apparently another character, Lars. So, Bill Nye? Dude, that is,
Who was he?
Bill
Oh,
Nye.
he was the rattlesnake. Wait a minute, that's not Bill Nye, bro. That's like some other guy. That's like a ripoff.
No, not Bill Nye.
Yo, what the hell's
science
his
guy.
name?
This is Bill Nye.
That last name's wild.
But this guy was he was Blackbeard or something in Pirates of the Caribbean. I forgot his name, but he was the dude with like the tentacle beard.
Interesting. He was that rattlesnake.
He was the rattlesnake. Yeah, it doesn't look like Amber Heard was in here. We would know if she was, because if there was any beds in the movie, they might have been defecated on. So, you have to keep that in mind. But
Allegedly.
It's all in jest. It's all in jest. But anyways, with that, folks, we are on to the next one.
And with that, folks, that is actually our last super chat of the night. So it's now time to jump into our live chat questions and our Morse code decoders. And we have tonight Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Nor Pritchett, Apple Garbo, Heroic Fluffiness, Coach Coach, Eric Sire, and Brian Blairstown. And he said, Morse code, why would we ever force Ukraine into a peace when Russia still clearly doesn't want one? And LLC, LLC.
And And that is the sound of money, folks. Y'all got that dead on the nail. The Lee Spring Army Signal Corps, they did it again. Truly amazing work. To think that the Lee Spring Army Signal Corps for 1,366 days has gotten that correct every single time. Never missed it once. That is unbelievable, honestly. I think y'all are cheating. I'm just kidding, by the way. I think y'all are doing amazing work. And I got to congratulate all of y'all once again for doing another good night's work on the Morse code message. So with that, I hope that has addressed that well. And unfortunately, folks, due to time constraints, we've generally run out of most time to be able to answer live chats. We did get a decent amount of them sponsored in the Super Chat segment, but we are only going to be able to get 3 live chat questions before we round this thing on out for the night. Also, by the way, a big shout out to Crispy, who threw in a $5 super chat, which is the 10th super chat of Crispy. So a big thanks to you so much for the support. You didn't throw in a comment, but we greatly appreciate you, Crispy, and you've always been here. You've always been here. You've been here forever, Mr. Torrance. But with that, it's time for us to move on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one's going to go to none other than Rodney. Oh, I'm telling you.
Oh, man, I'm telling you.
He said, what happened with the LNG tanker that was on fire on the border between Ukraine and Romania? Did it explode or what?
I actually didn't cover that story, and I really didn't look into it too much. Matthew, do you know what the fate of the tanker was?
I would assume it didn't blow up because we didn't get an update on it. So I would assume it probably was extinguished without an issue, which was the best case scenario, because if the thing went up, it would have been horrendous. So I think it was extinguished. That's my assumption.
Yeah, hopefully it was. But with that, we hope we addressed that the best that we could. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to BC Guy, who said, whatever happened to the Dragon drones and why aren't they used more often?
Whatever happened to the Dragon drones? We don't really know. I guess the production numbers dropped on them and they just stopped using them, or they eventually started to be phased into obsolescence because other platforms could do their job better. Possibly. So I hope that does address that the best that we can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Hackneys and Rhinelanders. They said, I would love to hear an assessment of the Rhodesian security forces. And were they as good as all the hype?
Oh, they were. Well, were they as good as the hype, or were their enemies as incompetent as they could be? And it's kind of somewhere in the middle between the two. The Xanu and Zapu were absolutely incompetent to the extreme. And so it made it really easy for the Rhodesian security forces to pretty much wipe the floor against the Xanu and Zapu. They could, like, in some battles, the Rhodesians would take no injuries and no fatalities and inflict hundreds of fatalities on Xanu or Zapu forces. So generally, their enemy was wildly incompetent. This is a funny anecdotal story from one of the soldiers of the Rhodesian or the RSF. Is that one time after they got done with the firefight, they looked at one of the AKs that the Xanu foot soldiers were using, and the rear sight on the AK was dialed up to the maximum range. And let me see if I can show y'all a rear sight on an AK. It's this little thing right here. And this little round cylinder here on the sight actually adjusts the elevation. The farther up you push that cylinder, the higher up the rear sight goes, and it pretty much arcs your shot in, basically, at longer ranges. So they found that it was pushed all the way up to max. So it was, I think, out to like a 1,500 meter range. So the rounds that the Xanu foot soldiers were firing were going right over the RSF's heads. So they asked one of the survivors that they took prisoner, why in the world are y'all doing that? And apparently the answer is that they believed that the higher up they pushed the rear sight aperture, the higher powered the bullets were. So basically they didn't even know how to shoot. So it's pretty easy to defeat an enemy that hardly even has an understanding and manual of arms for the rifle that they're using. So that was kind of also a big reason why the RSF looked to be legendary and mythical with their abilities, is that they were fighting an extremely incompetent fighting force. So I would say they were quite good, not discrediting the RSF at all. They were incredibly good. But at the same time, their opponents were practically idiots with the amount of intelligence they had in even operating a rifle. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I have to thank you all so much once again for watching. We have been on air for 3 hours and 41 minutes at this point. And we have had a peak viewership of 13.7 thousand people tonight, and a total viewership of 101,000 people. It has been a truly incredible night, and we always are honored to be able to cover the news for each and every single one of y'all, and to continue to tell y'all of the major events and developments and our analysis each and every single day. We are always honored and greatly appreciative to have you all as our guests, and we hope that we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time when we cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. Also, folks, if there is enough news, and news is kind of a bit splotchy right now, we're kind of going through a little bit of a lower period, but if there is enough news tomorrow, Matthew will be the one making the short war video, so we hope to see y'all, if he has one to make, then as well. And so with that, good night, everyone. We will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, Ram Slava. Long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, thank you once again for joining us yet again on another night of war news streaming, that is, tonight. And the Cult of Matt will convene tomorrow midday for a short war video if there is enough news to cover. But of course, the Cult of Matt only serves the best of news, as they say. So unless there is big news to cover, there may or may not be a short war video tomorrow. So we'll have to wait and see. But on that note, stay tuned for it. And in the meantime, thank you all for watching. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Hiram Slava, get some rest, and good night.